All right, good afternoon. The time is now 1:03, and I believe we can get started. We are at quorum, so for the record, the time is now 1:03, and we have begun the Assembly Bill 32 Environmental Justice Advisory Committee public meeting. Welcome, everyone. My name is Jane Harrington from Leading Resources, and I'm the facilitator for today's meeting. I'm excited to be here with you all today. Before we start with order of business, housekeeping will be covered on Zoom to facilitate the public comment period and a few critical details related to being here in the Sacramento facilities. Spanish interpretation will be provided in the Zoom Spanish channel for the duration of the meeting. We also have 2 interpreters to support today's meeting. For those in the building, restrooms are out to the side, out the door to the left and down the hall by the drinking fountains. In case of an emergency, please exit out the door to the right, down the stairs. We will have public comment periods today. As a reminder, please limit your comments to that agenda item. And while EJAC welcomes your comments, committee members will not be responding to public comment, except as to put it on a future agenda if needed. For members of the public participating remotely, you will be able to raise your hand in Zoom to speak during the public comment period. When it's your turn, the host will ask you to unmute, and after you click on the unmute button from your end, you can begin to speak. We will be switching off between commenters who are here in the room with us and those also attending on Zoom. We intend to give each commenter 3 minutes to speak, and I will let you know if any changes are required based on the volume of comments. In the event that *6 does not work to unmute, we can unmute you on this end. We appreciate you staying on mute until it's your turn to speak. Before providing your question or comment, please state your name and affiliation if applicable so that we know who is speaking. We will do our best to do the same in the room for members of the public to know who's talking here. Zoom Q&A and chat functions are turned off for participants. I'd now like to introduce our Spanish interpreter that is on the line. Grisel, if you could please introduce yourself and translate the information on this slide. Or Carlos, excuse me, we've got Carlos in this room. Go ahead.
Thank you. Muy buenas tardes y bienvenidas a esta sesión del Comité Asesor en Justicia Ambiental. Se está ofreciendo interpretación simultánea, por lo pronto orientación sobre el uso de la plataforma Zoom. Para levantar su mano, si nos acompaña vía telefónica, oprima gato número 2, para levantar su mano virtual. Se les informa a los participantes vía telefónica que durante la sesión de comentario público se habilitará su micrófono para que puedan encenderlo y marcaría *6 para silenciar o reactivar el sonido. Thank you.
Thank you. For those who are participating in person and are logged in on Zoom, to prevent echoes, the easiest thing is to not join computer audio, but if you have already joined computer audio, you could leave computer audio as noted on the screen in number 1 and number 2. And please make sure to stay muted to avoid any background noise. Carlos, please provide the translated information on this slide.
Thank you. Para quienes nos acompañan presencialmente en la sala, a fin de evitar ecos, no se una al sonido de la sesión en Zoom si también está en Zoom durante la reunión. Si ya entró a la reunión también en Zoom, además de estar en persona, simplemente seleccione abandonar el audio de la computadora y asegúrese de silenciar su micrófono, como se indica en los puntos 1, 2 y 3 que ahora ve en pantalla. Gracias and thank you.
Thank you. Next, we will provide instructions and then we'll enable the Zoom interpretation features. When the interpretation globe appears at the bottom right corner of Zoom, as seen in number 1, please choose your preferred language as English or Spanish, as seen in number 2. Carlos, please provide these instructions in Spanish.
Thank you. Cuando el globo terráqueo de interpretación aparezca después del aviso en la parte inferior derecha, por favor seleccione su idioma de preferencia, sea inglés o español, como aparece en los puntos 1 y 2 en pantalla. Gracias and thank you.
If for any reason you require technical support in today's meeting, please contact CARB staff Bobby Rouge, who's in person here in Sacramento, by email as provided on this slide. we will do our best to assist you. Today's meeting is being recorded. CARB staff will post to the EJAC Meetings and Events website in the coming events the recording of this meeting. This is the same website where you can find all materials for today's meeting as provided on this slide. Carlos, could you please provide these instructions in Spanish?
Gladly. En caso de que requiera soporte técnico durante esta sesión, favor de comunicarse con Bobby Rush, quien nos acompaña presencialmente en la sala, al correo electrónico que aparece en esta diapositiva. Les recordamos que esta reunión se está grabando y los materiales de la reunión estarán disponibles en el portal del Comité Asesor de Justicia Ambiental, EJAC, de la Junta de Recursos Atmosféricos del Estado, en un par de semanas después de la reunión. Es el mismo sitio donde pudo acceder a los materiales para esta reunión. Gracias and thank you.
With that, I would like to begin the EJAC member roll call. As a reminder, this is the formal record of meeting attendance, and therefore we ask that all EJAC members respond when your name is called. Please state here your affiliations, pronouns, and if you are on or off camera, and if you're off camera, the reason for doing so, consistent with the meeting requirements. For EJAC members who might join the meeting later, we will be asking for them to verbally announce their attendance in the same fashion so it's clear who all of our participants are. So to begin, Martha Dina Arguello.
Good afternoon, Marta Dina Arguello, she, her pronouns with Physicians for Social Responsibility.
Juan Flores. Dr. Catherine Garupa.
Good afternoon, everyone. This is Dr. Catherine Garupa, they and she pronouns with the Central Valley Air Quality Coalition, here in person.
Kevin Hamilton.
Kevin Hamilton, he, him pronouns. Medical Advocates for Healthy Air. I'll be on and off the screen.
Thank you. John Harriel Jr. Thomas Helm.
Present in person, Tom Helm, Valley Improvement Projects, he, him, his. Is that everything?
Matt Holmes.
President Matt Holmes, masculine pronouns, California Environmental Justice Coalition, losing my voice.
Thank you. John Kevin Jefferson III.
Present. Hello. How are you all?
Ray Leone. Luis Almeida. Jill Sherman Warren.
Jill Sherman Warren, present, pronouns she, her.
Thank you. 7 present, 3 absent. We have a quorum. I will now turn it over to our co-chairs to go over today's agenda.
Do you want to do that?
I can do that, Martha Dina, if you want to do the meeting agreements.
Sure.
So today, after our usual meeting agreements review, opening remarks, and reviewing our meeting minutes, we will have an opportunity for public comment. Then we'll make a motion to approve our minutes, followed by a presentation from Air Resources Board staff on zero emission space and water heater standards. We'll have an opportunity for questions and discussion. Then we will have a discussion on Assembly Bill 1757, Natural and Working Lands, and the recommendations of that committee. The second opportunity for public comment. We will take a break as needed, then receive announcements from CARB, and end with next steps and closing remarks.
Thank you. Can I go on to meeting agreements?
Please.
Great. We know them, but I'm going to go through them quickly anyway. Pay attention to equity of airtime, be present, openness to being flexible in our approaches, be realistic and monitor our ability to get through the full agenda, we seek synergies in our work and build on each other's work. If virtual, keep camera on throughout the duration of the meeting. And if you're not, let people know in the chat that you're going off camera, and so that we can maintain quorum. If leaving the room, notify staff and co-chairs. Listen and be compassionate and supportive. Reach for and invite inspiration and intuition. Look for ways to move toward action. Where possible, respect the agenda and trust the process, and share responsibility for our success.
Thank you. We'll now move to agenda item number 3, introductions and opening remarks. I will turn it over to CARB staff and Chanel Fletcher.
Sure. Thanks, Jane, so much. And just wanted to say welcome to everybody. For those that don't know me, I think at this point most folks do, my name is Chanel Fletcher. I'm the Deputy Executive Officer for Equity, Communities, and Environmental Justice. Just want to give a huge amount of gratitude for everybody that's listening in and engaging in this process. Also want to say apologies in advance. My littlest one is on spring break. So if you hear screaming, yelling, or the baby decides to run in on this meeting, that is just my life for this week. And I also wanted to give a thanks to any CARB deputies as well as our chair's office who may be online. So I think as we already talked about and we walked through the agenda, we will have 2 main discussion items. We at CARB are planning to present on the zero emission space and water heater standards. I know that there were some updates that were on this topic in I want to say December 2023. And so today we wanted to make sure that we gave the EJAC an update on the process, as well as just ask some questions about desired engagement and just kind of understand and hear who else we should be talking to as it relates to the zero emission space and water heaters. And then I think as noted for the second agenda item, there will be a conversation on AB 1757. And so I just wanted to say a huge thank you to Matt Holmes just for your efforts on the coordination and pulling everyone together and just a lot of gratitude for making sure that this conversation did happen. A couple other things I'll just note is that we had talked about an EJAC satisfaction survey and that had kind of been a conversation in that EJAC charter subgroup. And so we've shared it with the members of that charter subgroup. They have until April 23rd to review and add their comments. Once we get their feedback, we are planning to send that survey to all EJAC members. And I think really the purpose of this is really to help us plan and strategize for the upcoming year. The other thing I wanted to share about was that we had talked about kind of a calendar for the EJAC to kind of plan for. And so we did end up developing and sharing with the co-chairs the external calendar. And so we're just asking for co-chair feedback by the 25th of this month. We want to make sure we get their input and then send that to all EJAC members. And really, I think the goal of this with this calendar was, again, to kind of help assist with planning, making sure that we're flagging the items that are both going to the board or places where the EJAC has asked us, we are interested in this topic and we want to hear more about how this is going to move forward. So those are my updates, and then I will turn it back over to the EJAC co-chairs to provide their opening remarks. Thank you.
I'll turn that over to the co-chairs. Thank you, Chanel.
Hi again, everyone. This is Dr. Catherine. I'll go ahead and start since I'm here in the room. It's really great to see so many folks in person. It's been a while since I've been able to see some of you. And I mentioned at the end of the February meeting that also I was taking a 2-part sabbatical, and today is my very first day back. So I'm going to keep my opening comments super brief in saying sabbaticals are awesome. I really highly recommend them. Everybody needs an opportunity to unplug, disconnect, and I also took 2 weeks where I wasn't reading the news at all. So really recommend people take the opportunity to take a break, and also really glad that my first day is back with you all talking about such important issues. Kevin, did you want to add anything?
Yes, hello all. Hello all, how are you? Glad to be back. Haven't seen you guys in a while. Times are changing, moving rapidly. A lot going on. We talked about 2025, or I did, a year and a half ago, and a lot of people laughed, but here we are. It's real. We got a lot of work to do. But one of the things that I spoke on and advocated for such a long time was the EJ policy and how we need to update that work. And I'll be a little more specific as to what I was saying. What I mean by that is that I think that we should be able to sit down with each department and help that department create an EJ policy for that department. And in that work, then we're now working on the same page. We have a policy that was created, I don't know, X amount of years ago, but that was a certain amount of people that just came up with that concept per se. But that concept hasn't been integrated into departments. And it's so obvious in that we've had 3 scoping plans that, you know, by inspection has resulted in nothing. That sucks. And I think that was because the departments don't quite understand what EJ is all about, so therefore they can't create priorities. If we don't have priorities, we don't have a budget and we don't have a staff. So that's what I'm talking about specifically. We don't need to recreate the words that's on that perfect paper, but we need to sit down with each department and explain to them what EJ is, have them sign on to what that means, but more importantly, to create departments from an EJ perspective for each segment or department or agency or however you guys define this. And in particular, enforcement, engineering, compliance, you know, all of that good stuff. If we are not talking the same language, we are not having a conversation. Thank you.
Thank you. Martha Dina, would you like to make comments?
Really short. Welcome back, Catherine. And I'm already ready for my own another sabbatical, but won't get one for a while. So vacation will have to do. I think you know, I'm excited today about being able to talk about the appliance standard and looking forward to that work that many of us are that are members of the EJAC directly and indirectly through our networks have been working on for a while, making sure that we have equitable ways to decarbonize our buildings that address many of the concerns that EJ communities have. And, you know, you know, really pushing toward this idea of co-design of policies to ensure that environmental justice is part from inception to evaluation. And, you know, that I think continues to be our goal as an EJAC, to be a resource to CARB staff. And so, you know, I hope that as we progress in this work, we get better at doing that kind of pre-consultation and pre-scoping and working with the environmental justice community in different ways. I'm sorry, with the EJAC in different ways, so that we can get closer to that co-design of policies. Because in this moment, you know, that CARB has made a commitment to keeping its environmental justice programs. I think that says a lot, and then we also want it to go deeper, given what's happening in the country. And I have not been avoiding the news, so I'm a little anxious. So I'm going to stop talking and let us get back to the meeting.
Thank you, Martha Dina. And I'll pause right here. I see we've had another EJAC member join us. Luis, are you with us?
Yes, hi, good afternoon. My apologies. I didn't see the Zoom link earlier, but I'm here, present. It's Luis Olmedo, Executive Director, Comité Cívico del Valle. And due to the limited bandwidth, I apologize, but I probably remain most of the meeting off camera.
Good. Thank you. Good to have you. All right. That will take us to agenda item number 4. We will review the February 13th EJAC public meeting minutes. We are now posting these on the EJAC website for the public's view. So we'd like to review and adopt the minutes from the February meeting. I would note that we did have a March meeting, and those minutes will be available at the next EJAC meeting. So this meeting will just be looking at the February meeting minutes, and I'll pause here from any discussion from the committee.
This is Dr. Catherine. I appreciate the minutes as an opportunity to summarize what was discussed during our meetings. In reviewing them, I do have a few minor edits for clarification that I want to go ahead and read into the record before we vote on passing them. So on page 9, about the middle of the page, the paragraph that starts with my name, the second sentence, she stated that California has 2 of the most polluted air basins. Right now it says owns. So it would be changing owns to has. Then page 11, the top paragraph, which again starts with my name because obviously I'm carefully reviewing what I said. Again, the second sentence, she had asked at that time whether CARB has the authority to implement no trade zones, not eliminate trade zones. And then 2 sentences down, there's just, I think, a couple words missing. It says she a refusal. So I think she said that a refusal. And then very last edit at the bottom of the page starts with Matt Holmes, recommended a deep dive into the natural and working land strategy, not the national strategy. So just a few clarifications there. And then with those edits, I make a motion to pass the minutes unless anyone else has other edits that we should review first.
All right, thank you very much. We appreciate the level of detail in the review of that. We do want to make sure these are correct. Other comments from the committee members on our minutes?
No, but I'll second it.
Okay, so I heard a second from Kevin Jefferson, and I heard a second from Kevin Hamilton. So
Oh,
I think,
sorry.
nope, you were good. Kevin Hamilton, you couldn't hear it there. But just noting it here for the record, that will take us to public comment. So at this point, we'll take public comment on this agenda item. If you'd like to make a comment, please step to the podium here in the room. If you're attending virtually, please raise your hand. I'll pause for a moment. All right, seeing no one at the podium and
Did we lose the room?
Did we lose sound?
That's what it feels like.
I
Yeah.
think we lost the room.
Oh, is that what happened?
Yep.
I don't know.
Okay.
Bobby, can you hear? Bobby or Karina, can either of you hear us? Well, okay. No, they just reached out to me.
Were you able to
Okay.
talk to them?
Yeah, so it sounds like what happened is that we got disconnected from the room and they are checking with audio visual right now. So we can all just kind of hang tight on Zoom and I will make sure to keep giving some updates.
Okay. Rest.
All right, we'll do a test here. Chanel, since I can see you, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear
Wonderful.
you and see you.
Good. We can hear you and see you in this room. I'm going to give our folks a moment to make sure that our interpreters are where they need to be and that is working correctly. When we paused the meeting, we had just received a motion to approve the minutes from Dr. Catherine and a second here in the room from Kevin Jefferson. We are now at the point to take a vote. I'll go ahead and do roll call for that vote. Martha Dina Arguello,
I vote to approve.
Juan Flores, Dr. Catherine Garupa,
Yes.
Kevin Hamilton,
Aye.
John Harriel Jr., Thomas Helm,
Aye.
Matt Holmes,
Aye.
John Kevin Jefferson III,
Yes.
Ray Leon, Luis Almeida,
Yes.
Jill Sherman Warren.
Yes.
All right, the motion passes. We'll now move to agenda item number 7, CARB presentation on zero emission space and water heater standards. I will welcome our guests in the room and let them introduce themselves. Thank you.
You, Jane. Can you all hear me okay? Okay, great. So my name is Emma Lawrence Tomei. I'm one of the staff working on zero emission space and water heater standards. I'm joined here today by my division chief, Jennifer Gress, and supervisor Melanie Zauscher. And I just want to underscore how excited and grateful we are to have the chance to share some updates on our work with you. I just want to start up front by acknowledging a couple areas, echoing Martha Dina's opening remarks that are a priority for you all. How CARB staff can come to you as a collaborator to inform the agency's work earlier on in our processes, and how we can work together to better achieve our agency's aspirations toward more effective climate policies as they relate to our AB 32 program implementation. So I just think today's a really valuable opportunity to connect, and I'm looking forward to our discussion. So on this next slide, I'll just give you an overview of our presentation. So it'll include some highlights from the first few years of our regulatory development work, focusing on how we've approached engagement. And then after that overview, I'll share some ideas about how our team thinks it would be really effective to involve you, but we're also interested in hearing, of course, what you think about that. And, today is really about laying groundwork for process, how we can work together to really find the areas of collaboration that are the most meaningful and significant to this group. So thinking about the ways of working together rather than diving in as much into our regulatory analysis and the content of the work that's still underway. So on the next slide, I just want to start by affirming some of our guiding values, which get at the heart of why we are pursuing a regulation at all. After the first public workshop we held in 2023, we elicited public input, and then we wrote these guiding values just to describe our priorities for the regulation development process. So these reflect our commitment to achieve the state's climate goals through a hopefully appropriate and effective regulation, and importantly, one that's developed through an inclusive process. I can't overstate how we're feeling, how the impacts of a lack of effective climate mitigation are already crystal clear. The devastating loss of homes and lives in more frequent and severe wildfires, drought, and acute heat exposure, and other impacts. And we recognize that the possible reach of zero-emission heating regulations raises real concerns around equipment and energy costs, housing security, rural needs, and more, which highlight the risks of not getting climate mitigation policies right. And these very real concerns around marginalized communities and those with the least capacity to invest in reducing the causes of disaster or recovering from disaster, they get leverage to keep us in our status quo of this rapidly accelerating environmental and human harm. So our team is here with you, just coming to say that we know that an effective zero-emission standard will also be an equitable one. And an equitable regulation starts with an accessible, transparent, and inclusive process, and one that can shape our regulatory analysis, our design thinking, and our implementation planning. So on this next slide, I just want to carry us into some of the details about the rationale for this standard grounded in CARB's policy initiatives. We're developing this regulation in the building sector, not just because it's a significant source of greenhouse gas emissions, but also because these emissions really contribute substantially to the air quality issues facing our state, which lead to non-attainment and other public health impacts. So just some of the numbers. These heating emissions contribute to about 8% of our state's climate emission reduction targets, and the scoping plan set a goal for 3 million climate-ready homes by 2030 and 7 million by 2035. Additionally, the plan called for 80% zero-emission appliance sales by 2030 and 100% zero-emission by 2035 for residential and 2045 for commercial. And it also included a strategy for 100% zero-emission appliances in new buildings beginning in 2026 for residential and 2029 for commercial. So as I mentioned, these building emissions also contribute 66 tons per day NOx. That's 4 times the NOx emissions of power plants statewide. And in the South Coast, that concentration is even greater, where buildings contribute 7 times the NOx of local power plants in that air basin each year, which adds to the risk of asthma, heart disease, and other illnesses. So air district rules, zero NOx standards for space and water heating equipment, can complement CARB standards, such as the one in the Bay Area, where communities of color actually stand to disproportionately benefit from the pollution benefits achieved by their zero NOx rules. I just want to say that contrary to some of the public perceptions and concerns about this regulation, it would not function as a point-of-sale ban or restriction to consumers, but it would rather encourage equipment manufacturers to grow an abundant, affordable, and healthy heating equipment market in the state. So on this next slide, I'll transition to just sharing some more about how our process has gone so far. So next, I'd like to just underscore how this regulation will need not only our best thinking on regulatory design, but also that we nurture a broad network of trusting, supportive relationships across the field of committed practitioners who can help make equitable building decarbonization a reality after a potential rule comes into effect. So through our initial workshops, research, and public engagement work, we're really gaining a deeper understanding of what the key design and implementation challenges are that we'll need to address. And so while we had previously anticipated bringing a standard to the board this year in 2025, based on our last year of engagement and deliberation, we determined that we need more time. We need to revise our regulatory concept to meaningfully address the key issues raised, so we don't expect to propose a standard to the board this year. And we're evaluating key issues we've learned through our public engagement process and thinking through alternative program designs and potential compliance flexibilities. So I think this is really a ripe time to connect. So on this next slide, I just want to share a little bit more about the processes that have been embedded in that broader timeline. So when the state SIP strategy was passed back in 2022 and throughout the scoping plan process, one of the clearest things we heard was calls for deeper and more meaningful community engagement. Fortunately, CARB had a draft and now final community engagement model, which was a really supportive resource to help us build a plan. The cyclic approach you see here to prepare, plan, implement, follow up, and evaluate offered us a framework for reflecting on how to meaningfully engage key groups across the informal and formal phases of a rulemaking process. So for us, this looked like after our kickoff workshop, we commissioned the support of Sacramento State to have assessment interviews, about 60 with different potentially interested parties over that first summer. That delivered an assessment report, which helped us then develop our own sort of staff outreach and engagement plan. And in that plan, the centerpiece is really this public expert process where we wanted to create an opportunity to kind of broaden the umbrella of who might be able to be involved in a deeper level with staff in thinking about analysis, public outreach, and potential implementation planning. So after we developed that plan, we opened up a public expert solicitation in the winter of 2023. And on this next slide, you can see the list of the public experts that applied, and some of whom were coming from community-based organizations and who were low-income individuals and received funding to participate in this group. So this application is still open to new members who can participate on a voluntary basis, as we don't have more funding for public expert members. So a lot of the issues that arise in relation to potential zero emission standards will lie outside of arenas where CARB's empowered to take direct action. So we believe that involvement of this broader practitioner and policy community in our reg development process will be really critical to effective implementation. So on this next slide, there's an overview of what happened next in 2024. And then on the next slide, I'll give you a little bit more detail. So in our technical feedback meetings, we provided an overview of some of the various methods that we'd use to estimate the costs and impacts of a potential regulation. And we requested feedback to fill some of our specific knowledge gaps and check our assumptions. The briefings from public experts focused on retrofit needs and costs, especially for affordable housing, strategies to prevent zero-emission retrofits from being used by landlords as a pretext for rent hikes and even displacement. And at our workshops, we provided an overview of our analysis approaches, regulatory concepts, and we requested alternative concepts. So next, I'll share some of the key learnings and experiences from our 11 listening sessions from last fall. Just want to share my sincere thanks to all the co-hosts who you see listed on this slide, and to Sac State for their contracting and planning support around these engagement opportunities. So across these listening sessions, we heard about renter experiences and concerns about relying on landlords who might opt to repair rather than replace, or even do things unsafely to cut costs. We also heard residents discuss the smell, discomfort, and risk of using existing gas systems, including from one person who had tragically lost a family member due to gas leaks and fires following an earthquake. We heard from residents from one of the most outage-prone areas of the state and about health and safety concerns transitioning from fuels delivered over shared infrastructure that can be at higher risk of failure during storms. In Allensworth, an unincorporated town in Tulare County, who some of you might be very well familiar with, we heard about the ways that really the best intentioned incentive and affordable decarb programs can leave some feeling experimented on and reluctant to participate again. So consistent and meaningful communication and follow-up action is really needed to repair trust. A site visit with Spur and San Francisco's Tenderloin Neighborhood Development Corporation left us with a great appreciation for how creatively these mission-based affordable housing providers must work to invest in decarbonization. We also met with several workforce experts and got a tour of training facilities at UA Plumbers and Pipe Fitters Local 342. We heard about the importance of skilled labor, particularly for preventing refrigerant leakage and properly sizing systems, and about the overall benefits of high road workforce policies like community benefits agreements and prevailing wage requirements. Our 3 closing virtual statewide sessions really complemented and reinforced what we learned in person across the state. Heard from residents about overcoming hurdles like having adequate electric service panel capacity, how contractors are a really critical delivery point for information about incentives and creative technical solutions. And the need for affordable equipment was a common refrain. And we also heard about challenges with delays around access to incentive programs, especially those that include permitting requirements. And we heard ideas about important supportive policy changes, including around energy rates and consumer financial protections. We did notice a gap in our virtual participation levels, with more joining from the Bay Area and Southern California sessions than in the Central Valley, which highlights a need for more concerted engagement work in that region. And finally, we heard pointed comments about CARB's ambition, both that we need to move faster on these critical regulations to address air quality and climate issues, and concerns that our economic analysis overly emphasizes benefits and doesn't adequately measure potential adverse impacts to businesses and households who don't qualify for low-income programs. So on this next slide, I'll transition to summarize some of our key takeaways from all this work so far, and then we can get into our discussion. So as we've been strengthening our consideration of these perspectives and more, we're just really happy to have this chance to connect. So our first major theme is, that a manufacturer-oriented regulation may still face household and business level challenges, and ones that we really aim to meaningfully address in a statewide regulatory design. So hearing from people around the state, we understand the potential challenges involved in a transition to zero emission heating and the barriers that a regulation should be sensitive to. We're striving for a regulatory approach that can grow a healthy heating equipment market and that matches the pace of progress around energy costs, infrastructure conditions, technology features, and these other supportive factors, so that zero emission adoption is straightforward and accessible to all as requirements come into effect. We have a lot of staff research and analysis work underway. The third bullet there offers a list of just highlights of our research contracts, which I would be super happy to dive into if you're curious about the work that we're commissioning around anti-displacement policy, propane and wood use, non-residential retrofits, equitable decarbonization, and a participatory action research project that includes the Building Energy Equity and Power Coalition. On the next slide, we have our next major theme is really around interagency alignment, which is going to remain critical to successful regulation design and implementation. We heard lots of requests and concerns that fall outside of CARB's bounds. So we're aligning strategy with other state agencies that lead on energy and building sector policies and planning. So one example is our work with the California Energy Commission to include scenarios related to our rules to inform long-run energy resource planning. We've also offered technical recommendations to the Department of Housing and Community Development for potential zero-emission new building codes. And the Public Utilities Commission is working to ensure that ratepayers are not funding new gas infrastructure where it can be avoided. They're shortening interconnection timelines, and they're piloting equitable rate designs and zonal decarbonization initiatives. The governor's 6 million heat pump goal by 2030 has also been a great catalyst for bringing agencies together for some of these conversations. They launched the California Heat Pump Partnership, which has provided an opportunity for quarterly meetings where state agencies and manufacturers can get together to think about shared strategy, and recently published this heat pump blueprint for the state. And so in CARB's world, we're really trying to make sure that the equity priorities remain centered within this initiative to rapidly increase heat pump uptake. And we really appreciate the chair's leadership as CARB's representative member on that board. And our third theme on this next slide, this related to collaborating with on-the-ground practitioners, which is really fundamental to successful implementation. These relationships we're building with program implementers, experts in building decarbonization practice, and with strong ties to their communities have helped us build a clearer sense of the key issues we need to address, and they've offered ideas about how. They've helped us scope analysis, check assumptions, and identify implementation strategies. And they'll be the ones working to get zero-emission heating equipment installed. They help us hold the perspective of the public, small businesses, and other end users in mind as we develop our manufacturer-facing regulatory design. So this figure shows responses to a question we asked at each listening session. Who do you think's missing that we should reach out to and include? So we really hope that the EJAC can help steer us towards meaningful ways to continue engaging environmental justice communities in this regulatory work. And we also want to build our connections with contractors, business leaders, and others who are not well represented in the comments we've heard to date, including the California tribes whose lands the state occupies. Finally, we want to be thoughtful and strategic about CARB's role in collaboratively encouraging shifts across various sectors to meet the state's climate goals. And we're reflecting on how to appropriately integrate additional outreach and engagement into our work ahead in partnership with other agencies working on similar issues. So with this next slide, I'll transition to some of our next steps, and then I'll look forward to your questions and the discussion to follow. So after our listening sessions, we had a report back meeting with the public expert co-hosts, those who presented briefings, the broader group you saw earlier, where we provided a more detailed synopsis of the topics I covered today and kind of checked to confirm our understanding and asked for their recommendations about next steps. Today, we're really here to have a similar conversation with you all. We'd like to hear your perspectives on this work, ideas for next steps, which we'd like to include in our upcoming engagement planning. So as we are refining our methods, getting more feedback, and developing a recommendation, we'll plan to bring results from that analysis and more details about potential concepts to our upcoming workshop. So next, I just want to carry us into our discussion. We're so eager to hear your thoughts and responses to the material I covered today. I'll do my best to answer your questions, and Jen and Melanie are also here to chime in with their thoughts. I'll just cover some ideas about how we think the EJAC could be involved. We think we would benefit from your feedback on our written methods. So we have 3 documents that are now circulating with public experts for review on our retrofit, emissions modeling, and cost analysis. Be very happy to offer those up for EJAC members to review as well. And we'd like to explore potential shared engagement opportunities once we have kind of concepts more refined and it's an appropriate time to go back out and listen and hear more feedback from the public. So we'd like to know which of these ideas might align with you. You know, we're also happy to come back to a future EJAC meeting to share an update like this. We just really want to understand, you know, what are the conversations you'd like to be having with us, and how can we, you know, show up with the information you're needing to participate in the development of this regulation in the way that is a priority for this group. So, you know, in these very deeply uncertain times, as we've been hearing, just want to, you know, hope that CARB can step up to continue striving towards equitable climate policies. We believe that the EJAC's collaboration will help our team develop a more effective regulatory strategy. So thank you again for this opportunity to share, and I'm looking forward to the discussion.
All right, we will open it up to discussion. I've got a hand raised virtually right now, Luis Olmedo, but we'll kick it off with Kevin Jefferson, who raised his hand here in the room. Go ahead.
Yeah, so as a former teacher, I like grading things by numbers. So let's talk numbers. You say that you have a goal of 3 million by 2030. We're in 2025, so we're 37% there. 37% of 3 million is 1.2. Where are you in homes? as of right now?
Thank you, Kevin. I can't give you that answer off the top of my head.
My second question is, we have 14 million homes in California. You have a number of 3 million. How did you arrive at that number?
I didn't personally arrive at that
I
number.
know you didn't. There's 3 of you guys there.
This is Melanie Zauscher, she, her pronouns, also at CARB. So to answer that question, that came from a letter that Governor Newsom sent to CARB requesting the 3 million climate-friendly, climate-ready homes by those dates and 7 million by 2035. So that's where those numbers come
I
from.
understand that. My question is, how did you derive, or he or her or whomever, derive at 3 million? Why are we using that number? And why do we even have that number if we don't know where we are right now with that number? You don't have to answer it, just a question.
I think the governor directed the number, right? So they just made it up. It's arbitrary. It's got nothing to do with history.
All right, I'm going to call.
Yeah,
So I'm going to just call it out in order that I see it right now. Make sure we hear from everybody. I had Kevin, Luis, Matt, Jill, and Dr. Catherine, but I do see Chanel's hand raised, so I'm going to pause for a moment and see if it's a response to the current discussion.
Yeah, no, sure.
Question to the number of where we are right now should be answered.
Yeah,
should be able to be.
Yeah, so I was going to say, I think on our end, Kevin, what we can do is kind of circle back with you on the number and make sure that we follow up on that piece. And I think, as Emma and Melanie were saying, the number from 3 million and 7, I think it's 7.5, that comes from GEO. But if you're asking a question of like how they came up with those numbers, that's what I think you're asking, right? How they came up with those numbers?
The more important question is, how many homes are we at right now to meet the goal of 3 million? Right? Because where we are will sort of determine where we're going, or if we're going anywhere, I would think, but maybe not.
Okay, so I think that is the more important question, it sounds like. So that's the one that we'll focus on circling back and bringing back to the group.
All right.
Kevin, thanks for the question. Your teacher energy, I feel it. I have the chart in my mind, and I just don't want to misspeak about what's on the y-axis, but it's like on the 3rd page of the heat pump partnership blueprint. I want to say we're between 2 and 3 million heat pumps in the state right now, and that's not zero emission heating overall, because zero emission heating also includes electric resistance. But that figure shows kind of where we'll get with sort of business as usual adoption and additional sort of policy related supports. And it leaves us, their estimates leave us at a 1 million heat pump gap based on what we can predict from existing incentives and programs and policies and sort of natural market uptake. So I apologize I don't have that number off the top of my head for you here today, but we'll make sure to get it to you.
I'm going to pause here for a moment. I want to note for the record that we've had another committee member join us. So Juan, I see you're with us. Would you like to state your presence, your pronouns, and your affiliation for us? All right, it looks like we may have just lost Juan. So I will go ahead and call out the order that I have here. We've got Luis, Matt, Jill, Dr. Catherine, and then Kevin Hamilton. Luis, would you like to go ahead?
Yes, hi. Good afternoon. Thank you for the presentation. Yeah, I'm working off my phone and looking at my notes here, so please bear with me. But the Department of Housing and Community Development Division of Codes and Standards has regulation on the installation of energy efficiency. Let's say, take for example, HVACs. The cost for permits are, I would say, for low-income home, cost prohibitive. Have any of you in your research report and broad assessment identified these barriers? Because as is, some of the people who need it most are those who can't afford energy efficiency when it comes to these strategies. Have you already identified that as a barrier? I mean, I'm hearing that even just to install an HVAC, it could be as much as $1,000 for a $2,500 or $3,000 HVAC unit, and we're talking about a split system, not necessarily a larger unit. That's my question. It seems to me like it's a real barrier.
Yes, yes, thank you for bringing that in. I think it was Luis Olmedo who's just
That's
speaking.
correct.
Okay, yeah, thank you. We have certainly heard about permitting costs as a barrier, and permitting streamlining is included and highlighted as one of the important initiatives that's part of this California Heat Pump Partnership Strategy. But we do recognize that those permitting costs can create a barrier to equipment, and we're including those in our cost analysis as well.
So, in addition to that, I'd like to, put forward a challenge. There are investments happening right now, significant investments in replacing not a rebate, not a partial payment, not a discount. There's investments happening right now for the full replacement of these HVACs, and that is a barrier right now. These aren't state dollars; these are philanthropy investors that are investing in what they call weather resilience programs. But these are real barriers right now, and so I don't think we have the time for a normal timeline, normal process. I think there needs to be emergency action, whether it's legislative action, whether it's departments, whether they have the authority. But this barrier needs to be removed right now. It's stopping the progress in installing in modular manufactured trailer homes. It's a real barrier. I'm sure that extends to other types of dwellings, but when it comes to modular trailers, manufactured homes, it is a real threat to the progress of leveraged dollars that are being invested right now. And so I like to put that forward for you, that I highly, highly ask, please pull together a huddle, do whatever is necessary, and pull all the minds together, because that barrier needs to be removed immediately. So thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you. So I'll note we've got Matt, Jill, Dr. Catherine, Kevin, and Martha Dean. I see your hand also. I'll start, Matt.
In keeping with the urgency theme, this is really important work, Emma. Thanks for the presentation. Glad you guys finally got a high five from the governor's office. I'm sorry it was only 3 million. We need all 14 million or however many there are. Crazy stat, Kevin. But is there any way to sort of, segment urgency? Because, Luis brings up the mobile homes, and we got people in Stockton, there's zero distinction between the external air and the internal air. Is there any analysis about most urgent households, most public health, impacts from those dwellings? Because our homes are killing us. And so that brings me to my first question, which is, I see a cost benefit analysis up there on the household, and I'm sure that's on like household income and disposable income. But how does that include the public health impacts to all of us living in old houses that rich people haven't fixed up? My next question is, how did we penetrate, the county by county air districts? I imagine I've tried to call those offices as well. I imagine that's, not streamlined. And then my final question was really insightful and thoughtful, and I'm reaching for it right now. I'll interrupt somebody a little bit. Those two questions, by the time you're done, I'll have it back.
I relate to the fleeting question, so feel free to interrupt me if it comes back. Thanks for the great questions, Matt. The first I heard was around equity and affordability analysis, just how we're thinking about cost, the distribution of costs and benefits, including public health impacts. And then the second around interactions with air districts. So the cost methods, if you were to look at the methods review document we have ready now, is high level in terms of it speaks to the sort of statewide assumptions for what typical adoption, maintenance, energy costs might look like for residential and consumer end users. Those include some regional nuance, especially around energy rates. So it includes the utility service territory to which a given building might belong. Now, we're trying to complement that. Well, that's the statewide cost analysis. And then additionally, the basin level health analysis looks at the aggregate emission reductions and then computes at the basin level avoided air pollution concentrations and associated health impacts. But we can't disaggregate the health impacts down below the air basin level to say county by county or household by household.
Because we don't have regional cumulative health impact studies, right? Yeah. Okay, thank you. Well, it sounds like there's a way to phase in most vulnerable households and regions.
Just speaking to that, I think you're pointing towards what we're really aiming for in some of our equity analysis. So right now we're thinking about, okay, we understand the retrofit needs, the issues that are more acute for mobile and manufactured homes. We don't have perfect information, but we probably have enough to estimate the relative, probability of how the building stock is distributed, at least within different counties. That can get us towards that kind of potential prioritization approach, or like, what does the emissions curve look like when we stack different segments based upon groupings of specific categories that are meaningful? So yeah, I'd love your.
We can save you time on that because we used to publish whites only housing maps, and we can tell you what the housing stock is and who still dies early. So, which brings me to my final question that I remembered. You want to work with us, and we have preeminent public researchers on this committee. But in our last meeting or 2 meetings ago, Dr. Catherine asked, "How are we supposed to help enrich this research process when people like her are restrained from supporting protection agency initiatives because she bothered to serve on this committee?"
Yeah.
It's obviously not for your department. That's for us to shame folks into giving your department more support.
Thank you, Matt. You're right that there are, restrictions around additional funding to CARB to JAC advisory members. But we are trying to work with research institutions and researchers that carry environmental justice perspectives and priorities in their work. And those groups often will have advisory committees and bodies. So one possibility that's arriving to me now is, just informing you all of what those advisory committees are on research projects so that you have an opportunity to participate, because, you all would be really valued voices in those venues, even if you can't get the funding to do the research, at least, under the current limitations. Just around this, so around the sort of county by county air district regulations, you're right that air districts and they're in a sort of myriad of different places in relation to advancing their own complementary zero NOx standards. In many ways, CARB's been following the Bay Area Air District's lead. They were the first to pass any kind of zero emission standard for this equipment, and we've learned a lot from participating in their implementation working groups. South Coast right now is kind of in the thick of their public process and is hoping to bring additional rules to consideration for their board, I think in May or June. But, by contrast, we had folks from San Joaquin Air District and San Diego coming to the listening sessions, wanting to get to know us, learn more about what CARB's thinking about, have an opportunity to make that connection and understand what CARB's regulation would mean in terms of their local work. The short answer, which I'm sure Jen or Melanie could elaborate on, is that ours is a greenhouse gas standard. So it's really distinct from any of the local air district criteria of pollutant regulations that have been focused on, NOx per joule standards for space and water heating equipment. This is more of a statewide standard that would cover the sort of portfolio of space and water heating equipment. And so it would be potentially a bit broader and also have this greenhouse gas emission reduction focus.
Is there any risk in that being concentrated in those two regions that have progressive or at least semi-reliable regional air districts, and will leave behind these counties and then our intransigent and unwilling partner in the San Joaquin Valley?
That's a great question. There's one, there's a lot to think about in implementation. It sounds like Jen wants to, yeah.
It's a leading question to say that whatever lessons learned from Backlund and South Coast, there should be some sort of framework for prioritizing folks that don't know they have this problem, don't know how to advocate for it. Because there's, we end up with competitive equity and we help the people that need it least.
Wonderful. We'll continue the discussion now. Jill, I think you are up next.
Hi, I was trying to find it. There is existing, one of the people that I saw was missing was the Office of Native American Programs for HUD, the Southwest region, which includes California. And they actually have real numbers of how many houses have been built on reservations through the HUD program. And, historically that program has had a number of problems. So you are finding homes that, they have water heaters, but they don't have any HVACs, like things like that. Heating is predominantly wood heating. So that's and or gas is the other heating sources in those homes. So those should be partners because those are real homes on reservations. And then also I noticed that you didn't have any HOAs. It didn't appear as though there were HOA participants, and I think that's a huge thing, especially when you look at how old some of our housing stock is in California. And those HOAs, they have all sorts of weird, don't dump your trash at 10 o'clock at night, or, all these crazy rules that they like to have. So those are partners that you definitely need to be talking to. I am very much concerned with people who are already financially challenged having to be more financially challenged because of rules that the state may impose. So I am happy to hear that you are not moving to make a rule this year, it sounds like. Maybe in a couple of years, I hope, or longer. I don't think our, just being very frank, I don't think our goals of hitting those zero emissions are realistic. And I think we're finding ways not to deal with those kinds of things. So I wish you well, and we will try to be as helpful as possible. I know, I know that you're trying, but in any way that I can help move those projects forward for California would be great, because I don't know that the California Department of Housing Development communicates to the federal HUD programs. So that's why there would be a separate nexus there.
Thank you, Jill, for all those comments and the great suggestions. The HOA participants or members did show up in some of the interviews that the UC Berkeley team has led as part of this participatory action research project with BEEP, really getting in depth with folks about what are the sort of struggles that they've encountered, including around, sometimes HOAs have been really supportive where there's a leader who will kind of offer a framework to the whole building and really champion something. And as you mentioned, in other cases, it can provide an obstacle. So yeah, thanks for the well wishes. We need all we can get.
All right, we'll continue the discussion with Dr. Catherine.
Thank you, Jill, for those important comments, and also the ability to laugh at it is important sometimes too, as much as it's an important subject. So thank you to CARB staff for the presentation and also for the work that you've put in with the Building Equity, Energy, and Power Coalition, or BEEP, which CVAC is a part of, and our consultant Katie helps facilitate. I had a question that Tom looked up and AI helped us answer. So I just wanted to call out on slide number 4, the goal about the 3 million climate ready homes. I was like, well, what is a climate ready home? And I was going to ask you, so just to point out, we all come at this from a different perspective, and sometimes unpacking the meaning of some of those words is really helpful. So at least according to what AI told us, the generic way I would summarize it is that it's like homes that are ready to withstand climate impacts like drought, extreme heat, wildfires, things like that, which obviously I think as a general principle is something that we're in support of and want to see housing move in that direction. As somebody who, works with communities in the San Joaquin Valley, also calling out that we do have a lot of older housing or housing of lower quality. So a lot of what AI was describing, at least, was very forward facing about new technologies or, retrofitting things. So naming that weatherization is something that we've also heard a lot from our community members as just a basic way to protect them from bad outdoor air. And do things like increase energy efficiency, because you can have a great heat pump, but if whatever you're pumping is escaping outside, then obviously that's not very helpful. So I wanted to underscore that, and also just mention, in case any of you all are available, that BEEP is coming to our next EJAC meeting on Thursday, May 15th. So again, your last slide talked about, how can we engage with EJAC? So we're trying to regularly bring the groups that we work with to be in dialogue with us and to bring us updates and reports, and we would welcome you all to come and be a part of that as well, if that's helpful to your work.
Thank you, Dr. Catherine. Much appreciated. There's so many important points in what you raised, and I'll lean on Melanie and Jen a little bit to make sure we caught them all. The first was around this sometimes elusive definition of climate ready, and I'm sorry you had to lean on AI for that. So climate ready, kind of unlike the definition you provided in this governor's initiative, was really more mitigation focused. So how can we get building emissions lower? But Jen in particular was much closer to that work. So is there anything you want to add?
Thanks, Emma. I think you hit the nail on the head. It's really about our homes ready to be equipped in a way to reduce, to install technologies that would help reduce greenhouse gas emissions. So are they ready to be electrified, as one example? So it's really about kind of preparing for the kinds of technologies in a home that will be necessary to reduce emissions. And on the weatherization point, I just want to underscore that we have been hearing that a lot. And I think one of the kind of emphases that we often make in every available forum is basically having a whole healthy home approach. So for incentive programs, we're always talking about the need for that. And I think that also ties in with making sure that homes are climate ready. So I think those are really important points, and appreciate you bringing them up.
Is it to that comment?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Also, have you spoken with the LIHEAP program people, the low income homeowners or home energy assistance program? Because these are the people who provide a one-time payment for people's bills, whether it's for wood, for propane, for electricity, and they would also be able to tell you probably what is actually being used by low-income people and where they're feeling the impacts.
Yeah, thank you. I really appreciate that recommendation. We haven't yet talked directly with the Heating Assistance Program folks. The Public Utilities Commission is much closer to all the relationships with direct bill assistance providers, and then there's the ones through PUC at the state level, and then there's a handful of federal. So we'll follow up on that. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll continue the discussion with Kevin Hamilton and then Martha Dina.
Yes, and thank you for all the hard work you're doing over there. We appreciate it. It's absolutely critical. I do want to echo Kevin's call for, a progress report. It's important to know where we are when we start talking about especially numbers, and we feel that we've got a number that's our target, and our progress to meeting that number really allows us to evaluate the processes that we're using, strategies we're using, and determine whether by continuing to use those we'll be able to actually hit those targets, or do we need to make some midstream adjustments. And in my experience, it always comes down to we need to make midstream adjustments. And the better our data collection tools and the more accurately and timely they are, the more likely we are to hit those goals. So that's just a comment. So this program and this problem has been around for quite a number of years now. I remember having a conversation with the folks from the HVAC organizations that represented them down in Riverside, I believe in 2018 or 17, and a reg like this was being discussed on this area. Since I did that work for about 8 years and did it when I was in the Navy, I'm pretty familiar with what's available and how it works. So I felt like I was talking to a dinosaur in a way, but also recognizing that they have their concerns, which are the cost of making these transitions, and will anybody buy this new technology? Do they really want it? So the ability to electrify an HVAC system is probably maybe close on to 100 years old at this time. The electric units were first in place in the 50s and 60s, the all electrics, which is kind of funny that we talk about now heat pumps like it's something new and revolutionary. It's not. It's just there's been no regulations pushing it, no focus on the damage that natural gas does when it's burned inside a home, and no interest in government incentivizing it for the most part. So that seems to be picking up now and maybe getting a little more steam. And I have to think of shades of LCFS here. We're talking about an energy program. We're talking about utilities either managing deployment of or running incentive programs to support this. The IOUs are critical partners here, and I think that the lever that CARB has is how LCFS money is used, and this is obviously to me an obvious target where those funds should be landing. Otherwise, I see very little chance for this kind of technology to end up in the homes where people are most desperately in need for it. These newer units don't draw a lot of electricity. It's not like pulling in the old air conditioning units where you needed a heavy duty 220 plug that drew a lot more electricity into the house. For the most part, these newer units are very low electric users compared to the old ones. So again, we see this in the San Joaquin Valley, where we see these homes that are, pushing on 100 years old, many of them 60, 70, 80, 90 years old, built back in the 30s, 40s, and 50s, and they leak like a sieve. And so you really have two issues here. One is, how do you seal the home? Well, there's a program for that the utilities run, but it's littered with draconian restrictions and requirements that make it very difficult to operationalize. So the fact that you're working with them is critical. Is how can we work with them actively and effectively to remove some of those restrictions? I know the asthma teams that I've run for a number of years in households who've tried to help people sign up for these programs have a list of those barriers that have been created to do that kind of thing. So once the house is sealed, then you can talk about, improving the indoor air substantially without having to load an air cleaner in everybody's room in the house, which is the approach that we've been taking lately. So I appreciate the work that you're doing. I hope to see more of it, and I hope to see it actually creating change out there. And again, would love to see some tracking implemented so that when these reports happen, we can get a better sense of the kind of progress that's being made. And I think it's really critical that at some point, some of those partners come to a meeting like this with you, somebody from CEC, CPUC, and the building organizations who have an interest in this, and hearing from them as well would be very useful. Thank you very much for your time today. There was not a question in there,
thank you.
so you don't have to
Okay.
answer.
Okay. Thank you. Yeah, heard on the progress report for next time.
Thank you. We'll continue the discussion. We've got Martha Dina and then Kevin Jefferson.
Great. Thank you so much for that presentation. You know, I think giving us the time to do the interagency collaboration that's needed to actually roll out a program like this and make sure that, you know, it's not just the early adopters who are doing this, but that we bring these direct emissions reductions into people's homes who may have horrible outdoor air quality, where this could, you know, sort of help reduce some of those burdens. So, you know, Physicians for Social Responsibility for Disclosure is a member of BEEP. I don't staff that. I'm not part of that, but my staff has been working with you, and so has the coalition. And I think, you know, the partnerships that you have with the groups that are doing the anti-displacement work are really important. And when you do that, right? So those of us in LA, and, you know, through a number of different coalitions that have been working on affordability, on access, and displacement and gentrification issues, were able to pass a City of LA ordinance. We call it the renovictions prevention, right? So that landlords who are doing renovations cannot evict the tenants, because that's often used as a way of evicting tenants and driving displacement and gentrification. So that kind of partnership is really critical, right? And that you are making space for that conversation by even bringing it up and having it on a deck matters to us, right? And then deepening that partnership so we can inform both the cities and the local air districts about how to do this. And this whole healthy homes approach, I think, you know, sometimes we worry, like, is that going to be fast enough? That's going to be really hard and it'll slow us down. But I think that's the way to actually, you know, do the hard work of getting this into low-income communities. Because if your urgency means that a whole bunch of people are left out, then you haven't actually fixed the problem. So I appreciate that that's a lot of tension between that sense of urgency, but getting it right. And so I just want to say, and again, no question there, but, you know, the other question that has come up for us is, you know, having, and again, you're dealing that with this collaboration, which I think is also really important. And I want to echo Kevin Hamilton's point and others that perhaps bringing some of that work that's being done in an interagency fashion around the building decarb work to EJAC could be a way to sort of speed up some of that interchange and collaboration that we need. Because we need to address that we have adequate grid capacity for all this new electrification that, you know, through the pilot projects, I think have shown us a lot, right? That's about $6,000 per household. We also, you know, I've worked for many years before doing a lot of climate work, did a lot of work around lead. And what we found was that the number one way kids were getting poisoned, you know, lead exposed, was through housing renovation. So folks were coming in and doing dry scraping, and, you know, so in a renovation or a fixing up the building, we were creating a lead hazard. We had no way to stop it. So we spent years building the regulatory structure so that we could go say, you got to stop this bad practice. You got to do it in a lead safe way. But it forced us to work with code enforcement because there was no code. It forced us to work with the health department. And it actually meant we also were working with the contractors and training contractors on how to do the lead safe practice. So I think that healthy home model does really offer a way to hit all the different groups that sort of have to be part of this transition as we move away from gas as a way to power our homes. So again, there wasn't really a question other than, we're very committed to working with you on this, to getting this to as many homes as possible, and to, really leaning on the expertise that both the EJAC has, but certainly the BEEP Coalition, and then the broader set of groups that are really working to help us address this huge public health problem.
Thank you.
Thank you. Kevin Jefferson.
Yeah, so just a little bit of follow-up. I had asked that you come with the numbers of where we actually are. In that report, can you indicate what percentage of that is in AB 32/fence line communities? And then the second thing is, I serve as the co-chair of the Bay Area Air Quality Management District's Community Advisory Council. And one of the things that our CAC was able to do was to get the board of directors to implement a community benefits fund. And that fund consists of 80% of lawsuit settlements going into a community benefits fund. So currently we have about $100 million in that fund. I am asking that you guys, the other thing that I see is a disconnect between CARB and the air district. And what I mean by that is that I spent time creating scoping plans for air districts and CARB, but never was there a conversation between the two. Never was there follow-up conversations to see if those plans are together, and never have I ever really seen them working together on anything meaningful than a CUTE meeting. So this is an opportunity for you guys to come out and share this program. And the reason why I'm asking that is that perhaps that will motivate the air district to understand that these are things that community benefits fund can invest in. But more importantly, to also share what we are doing with other air districts, so perhaps that could be duplicated. So we can get past the framework of you guys over there and us over here, and how do we work together to solve problems.
Thanks. Thank you. I'm going to pause here and make a facilitator's note. I do believe that we've had another committee member join us. I want to note for the record that I think he may have been in the public attendees room, so he might have been with us for a little bit longer. But Ray Leon, I would invite you to state your presence and your pronouns and your affiliation if you're with us.
All right. Good afternoon, everybody. Ray Leon, Executive Director of the LEAP Institute. And that's about it. Oh, and Mayor of the City of Huron.
Thank you. All right. Good to have you noted for the record. So I'll pause for a moment and see if there's any additional discussion on this agenda item.
Hey, Jane. This is Chanel. I'll chime in because my camera's been off and on because trying to juggle this baby and I have to go put him down for a nap. So I just wanted to make sure that I said a couple of things because this has been a really rich conversation and has been super helpful. I think the things that I wanted to emphasize is that I know that we are taking notes and making sure to track all of the follow-up items. I think there'll probably be a couple of places I'm imagining, like I took some quick notes where I was like, oh, I might need clarification on that. One of them, and we don't have to figure it out right this second. I think we can always follow up later, but one of them, I think, kind of to your comments, Kevin, on the AB 32 community, for example, like it'll be helpful to kind of understand what you mean by that and what you're looking for. So I just wanted to make sure that I flagged that as one. And I think the other one that I just noted, which would be helpful, I think, Matt, you had made a comment too about, I couldn't tell if you were talking about the Research Screening Committee or 87104 as being the barrier for participation. So just some places where I think we want to make sure that as we're following up, we're thinking about what communities we're talking about and what some of the barriers are. So I just wanted to note that. The other thing that I did want to kind of just acknowledge too was I think the idea of coming back, right, and bringing CEC to that conversation makes a ton of sense. And I know that Bay Area has space and water heater regs. So I think, Kevin, kind of your point right of that intersection between like the air district and what we're doing and how it builds on each other also makes a lot of sense to me there too. And then I think I also did want to just kind of tease, I'm teasing this out, and I guess I just wanted to make sure that I'm hearing it correctly. I think on the EJ policy, I know Radhika has had a couple of conversations with a few folks. Her team is leading on that and looking at that update. So I'm sure, Kevin, she'll probably follow up with you as well. And that will be agency wide. So that's definitely something that we want the EJAC's input on, but it will be agency wide. And then I guess the question that I wanted to make sure that, because I kind of wrote it down as a scribble, but I'm not sure. Is there a question that kind of to this point that I think Kevin Hamilton, you brought up around like a progress report, right? And we're talking about it both in the context of like, where are we at with the numbers, for example, on this? But I also kind of I think I heard it a little bit on like the scoping plan and like EJ and like progress report. So I don't know if I made that up or not, but I just wanted to note that teasing out a little bit of like, is that another piece of this progress report, or like where are we at on scoping plan implementation as it relates to EJ? Because that does feel like it's firmly within the purview of this body. So those were my quick notes, places of follow up, and then just asking clarification on the EJ policy and teasing out this idea of like progress report. And I think, Kevin, you wrote in the chat, yes. I appreciate that.
Sure. Yeah, we'll continue discussion on this. Thank you, Chanel.
Awesome. Thanks, everybody. Oh, wait, go ahead. I'm so sorry. What was that?
But just in response to what you were saying, AB 1332 communities, I basically was saying fence line, but I don't know if you guys use fence line or know what that means. But more specifically, how many homes are you helping that are real close to a gross polluter? Because when I see a lot of investments in free projects and programs and stuff, it generally goes to the rich and famous. And the priorities never get down to who really needs it.
I got you. Okay. Thank you, everybody. Wish me luck on that time. All right.
Thank you, Chanel. Great. So I'll pause one more moment, see if we have any other comments from the committee or CARB staff. Go ahead, Tom.
I'll make it quick. A lot of what I was thinking was already said by other members. Just another plug for, the San Joaquin Valley. We're talking about areas that are going to be extremely hot, that have extreme air pollution problems, and rundown homes that, still have swamp coolers and things like that, without proper filtration. And we're in an area where the air district is still giving out money to have better wood burning stoves, or, cleaner wood burning stoves. So that's the situation in the San Joaquin Valley. I just putting that extra plug in there. And, just the other thought I had, makes sense to obviously do, multiple projects in one, because I've seen in some situations, if you're doing like piecemeal, it can be very inefficient. You're tearing out the same thing 3 different times to do, water efficiency and weatherization and new heat pumps and things like that. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, thank you again so much for just all the fantastic comments and ideas. I just feel very grateful and kind of swimming with ideas about next steps. So just a couple things to clarify in terms of that closing discussion slide with some of the ideas we had offered. Just want to make sure the next time that we meet with you, we have the answers to the kinds of questions that are important to you. So one thing loud and clear was like, just what are the basics of numbers around zero emission heating and where in the state? And so that's certainly something we can bring as a foundation for our next conversation. The other piece is, I guess, potential opportunities that I wanted just to highlight, and you don't need to answer today, but just gauging your interest around. So we have this public expert group, an opportunity to look in detail at our methods documentation, including a lot of the numbers that might be of interest. So if you'd like to sign up to participate in that group, that opportunity is open to all of you. So there's those kind of method and analysis track. There's also the track of folks who've been our engagement partners. So I know it can be a lot of capacity to co-host and plan an event with CARB, but when we get to that stage of thinking about additional rounds of outreach, we'd be really receptive to any of you, your organizations or folks you know of who you think would be good partners for additional outreach events. And then the third element, which we really won't get to until after our next workshop and after we've been through the reg concept work more, is thinking about implementation strategies. So a lot of what you're bringing in around, well, how do we weave in weatherization programs? And how do we think about this in this sort of broader network of other state policies and programs? Those conversations and like what the practical kind of need to do priorities are going to be a focus after we have a little bit more clarity on what the regulation design's looking like. So it'll be another focus of that work to which you all are very warmly invited to participate in. So I think it can be a mix of us coming to this venue to share, coming to listen like next month to BEEP, and then also where it makes sense and you have capacity to loop you into meetings, briefings, discussions that we have on our methods where you really want to take that deeper dive. Does that broadly sound like a kind of fair way we can go from here?
I'm going to invite Martha Dina. It looks like you might have your hand up. I'm not sure if it's in response to that question, but I'll.
It wasn't, but yes. And I, again, want to extend the invitation to come next week, next meeting when BEEP is here, where maybe we can have a conversation that's more iterative at that point as well. But that wasn't the reason I raised my hand.
Any other committee members want to accept the invitation there, I think?
Just that we all know you're not going to get enough money to meet this project at scale. So every time there's a question or, uncertainty, we can always err on the side of those most vulnerable households. And so cost benefit analysis really needs to stop looking at consumers' ability to meet us halfway. I don't care if you give my neighbor more money than me, so long as he's not burning down my forest by running an old heating system or dying too early in his home. It's okay to help each other. Just because they get something doesn't mean somebody else didn't.
Oh, thanks, Kevin, for bringing that back in. I think it just would be remiss to let this meeting go by without giving a shout out to the folks at the CEC working on the Equitable Building Decarb program, the folks working on the Tech Clean California program, is really increasingly prioritizing equity incentives. The HERA money, fortunately, is safe. It's arriving, and there's 80 million total that's getting rolled out in California. So there's more than there's ever been, and there's not enough, and we're in this uncertainty. So, alongside the sort of statewide cost analysis we do as, part of any regulatory proposal, our team is also thinking about what are those case studies that really think about examples for how things pencil out right now and how could they pencil out in the future. So would love to have you as a partner in just brainstorming, like what should be on that list? What do we need to, go into in detail? And who do we talk to around, where there's rooms to at least get the money that we have flowing better? How can CAR be an ally in supporting that work?
Martha Dina, go ahead, please.
I'm just having a brain fog moment. So this is space and water heater standards. Will there be, there will be other standards, right, that will roll out over time in terms of home appliances and gas home appliances?
The scope of the state SIP strategy was, space and water heaters with the potential to consider other end uses. And our team has decided to focus on space and water heaters for the scope of this regulation.
I knew something. I just couldn't call it up in my head. And thanks. So thank you for that.
Yeah, go ahead, Kevin Jefferson.
So just out of curiosity, what are those other areas that you decided to not work with?
So other end uses like cooking and clothes drying. We are including pool heaters in the scope. I didn't mention that as a kind of water heater. Yeah.
All right. So it looks like this concludes the discussion on this item. Great, wonderful. Thank you, everyone. The time is now 2:42. I'll note for the record that we have one more discussion item on the agenda. And for those Public attendees, we will have a public comment period after that discussion item. But at this time, we would like to take just a short 5-minute break. The time is 2:42. Let's return at 2:48. We'll now go off record. All right, let's reconvene. The time is now 2:49. Noting for the record that based on the committee members in the room and those attending virtually, we are still at quorum. The time is 2:49. We'll reconvene now for agenda item number 9, the EJAC discussion on Assembly Bill 1757, Natural and Working Lands. I believe this is an EJAC discussion, so I will turn it over to EJAC.
I was talking. You announced the natural working lands.
Yes.
Yeah, cool. I created the slide. It's really sophisticated. Do we have all our people online?
We do. I see we have Martha Dina, Luis, Kevin, Matt, and Ray still attending online.
Okay, so just to set this up, and because my voice is terrible to listen to, we talked about this last time, how this sort of scenario has been backburnered for a while, and rightly so, for all the LCSF disappointment that we went through. But that there really is an opportunity here in exploring this natural and working land scenario with staff who really acknowledge that there's a lot to be gained in better developing the scenario. And uniquely, we have a expert advisory committee from another agency that was, convened by legislation and came in with really humane and bold recommendations that supported nearly everything that we talked about here in EJAC, which was investing in people and places results in wealth creation and sustainability and resilience, and can also hit this sort of this sort of abstract carbon target that may or may not be the solution. But we have really smart people that came up with really humane recommendations, and they still managed to hit the carbon thing. And so we need to talk about that because they went through a 2-year process where they really did a sprint to come up with these recommendations, and we got to the end of it, and it was it felt anticlimactic. I think I was having a bad day. I think there was some shouting in that meeting, but I don't want this committee's work to go to waste. And because of our status as sort of a rolling or a so-called permanent committee advising on implementation, I think we have an obligation to review this input and consider it in our recommendations to the board, and to be aware of activity in the legislature, building to, direct CARB to prioritize investments in natural and working lands, climate resilient solutions. And I think there are broader implications for that to the rest of the scoping plan and how it meets its 2045 targets. So let's, we know who needs the most help. We know where we want to invest. And now we have, scientific firepower to support that. And I think we could get a lot out of meeting these folks from the other agency to support our opinion and to add further gravitas to our need to save those that are most vulnerable, and use proven technologies like wetlands, trees, and grasslands, and acknowledge the fallibility of engineered systems, particularly unproven ones, to help us meet our carbon goals. So I just did a really brief overview of those recommendations. Can we go to the next slide? So I just said all that stuff. And the hope is to schedule meetings with these folks in the future, so that'll come at the end. But these were the original scoping plan projections that were conservative because of the variability of how we understood ecological services. But in every scenario, the expert advisory committee increased the plausible carbon sequestration capacity of several measures. So next slide. I just said all of this. Next slide. So that, when we were in here, we talked about generically, natural-based systems for sequestering carbon. We spent a little more time defining that in the other committee. And then there was this climate smart criteria that the Natural Resources Agency was rolling out in plans. And so we helped add further definition to that. There is legislation right now to provide sort of a legal definition of nature-based solutions. So it would be wise for this body to be making recommendations that are most current and fully informed. Next slide. These are sort of 8 areas. We ended up distilling into 7 working groups, but we have, world-class, first-rate researchers working in each of these areas that came back with relevant and scientifically substantiated recommendations. They not only do they all help us meet our big target around our carbon goals, but they added a chronological or a temporal urgency to this. Saving nature doesn't happen in 10 or 20 years. These ecological systems need to be underway right now. As the old maxim says, the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. The next best time is now. And if we wait on some of these, particularly, I won't even pretend to say particularly, if we wait on any of these, we are compromising their ability to stabilize and to survive this great period of transition. So next slide. Another, a benefit of this group's input is that they addressed what we started talking about, however many, 4 years ago, when we first joined this committee, the geographic granularity. You can't just talk about a scenario corner to corner as a statewide economy plan. Geography matters. And so we have recommendations that are spun out not only across time, but also across geography, which really makes this relevant and tangible and place-based. When we talk about what we want to invest in, we're going to be talking about people, and we're going to be talking about their homes and their communities, and we're going to be talking about their elected officials. So I think we have a really ripe opportunity to feature important work and to connect it to the people who will be injured should we fail to fully invest in this scenario, that there are communities who have needs, and right now they're grasping at straws. You go up to forest communities where I grew up around the Dixie Fire. They want to do something about forest fires and resilience, but they aren't being provided with the vocabulary or the policy background on how underfunded the home hardening efforts are by CAL FIRE. And at the same time, they are fielding business proposals from international biomass profiteers who, have scary names and long histories of administrative violations. And if you grew up in Lassen County and you're used to working for the prison and they close it down, you're looking for a job, somebody tells you to work in a wood pellet mill, it sounds like a great opportunity. But we're being subjected to sort of fire sales on our landscape management considerations. And, if we're really getting serious about climate change, cutting down our forest to set it on fire somewhere else on this planet doesn't make a whole lot of sense. And especially the way they're doing it isn't going to provide us with a forest resilience. So without leadership on the state's supreme planning document, regional planners are turning to what they know, and we are not making fully informed or aligned policy decisions throughout the state. Next slide, please. One more slide. That was unnecessary. I shouldn't have put it in there. There's real specifics on investments in ecological services. All I'm sharing with this committee is sort of high-level direction from the advisory committee, which I appreciated, and I hope this is what we can use to direct future conversations here. So you can read what it says there. We're getting it wrong in conservation, and we are underfunding restoration projects, and we are not meeting this problem at scale. So when I hear about, like we talked about a progress report in the last session, we just heard from a program that has the ability to save people in their homes and save the state and help it meet its goals, but they don't have enough money to do it. Meanwhile, it turns out there's $50 million to fund a sustainable aviation fuels project in a low-income community of color that only makes jet fuel for people who don't have these problems. So there's definitely an issue with prioritization that this study helps us address. One more slide. So from the beginning, we all know we're on a cross of carbon and we have to meet this abstract standard related to CO2. The good news is we did the math and we can do it. Next slide. Doing this stuff that's good for everybody and is good for everywhere is cheaper than doing other stuff that nobody's ever done before and can't prove will work. How's that for a terrible description? One more slide, please. These investments are gonna, I mean, every single year we're fielding a disaster. We're in the middle of crisis management. And when your house is on fire, you'll pay anything for the fire department. But these investments will help us stabilize and respond to emergencies and disasters and keep people alive. Next slide. This strategy is an equity strategy. We can make it even more so by really managing it well, but at the most basic, investing in the places that need the most help when it comes to conservation and restoration is also the places where we've left the most people behind. And you can drive to any city in California and you can see where the maintenance man's been taking care of the trees and taking care of the stop signs. And we know what side of town still has sidewalks from 1936. Next slide. This was sort of regardless of climate change, we all know the fight we're coming up on with water. We got a water diet that's gonna pinch guys that have never learned how to tighten their belts, and they're gonna squeeze all their own counties under this sigma. So parks and landscaping and schools and commercial districts, you're all gonna dry out while somebody still grows and makes money off of water. That water will continue to diminish without these restoration and conservation practices we so desperately need. One more slide. We're already late to this, and it's going to require a ton of hustle. And hopefully we can see the same kind of streamlining and prioritization that we saw when it came to inventing new things that don't work. So we need to, we literally have so much time to invest in this, or that number 10 billion turns to 20 and still doesn't work as well. So next slide, please. Go a little bit further. These are all the smart people who I try not to interrupt, but they're from all over, and many of them are going through tough times right now considering their employment. So we're grateful for their work, and we can talk to these folks. We can have them come in, and we can have them add flesh or details to their recommendations. And they all organize underneath these expert working groups. So we'll look at those again. Next slide. I think it's next slide. 2 more slides. I just said all this stuff. Geographic, sequencing, urgency, smart enough not to be argued with. And we can't wait till 2027 on natural and working lands. We have an urgent imperative right now. One more slide. So these are kind of directions that I want to talk to the committee about. In each and every one of these scenarios, there are huge pregnant opportunities to help vulnerable communities, within the EJAC purview.
Noting for the record, it looks like we might be having some technical difficulty. Martha, Dina, can you give me a thumbs up if you can hear me? And can you still see the slides? Yes. So noting for the record that our virtual participants can still hear us and can still see the slides that we were projecting. So I think because we're coming up on discussion that we can still continue with this agenda item. So we'll continue with the meeting, and I'll just invite Matt to.
Yeah, you bet. I mean, I think we're kind of at the point where we want to talk. I could have reached out to the members of the committee and said, when are you available and when can I get you scheduled to cross paths with the Environmental Justice Advisory Committee? But I didn't want to cook that up because of my experience and what I knew. I wanted this advisory committee assembled to give us direction on priority areas. I mean, I could already say, croplands and disturbed landscapes. We all know we're dealing with real threats to farm worker communities. We got a second-class California in the Central Valley, farms and pesticides are definitely going to be a part of what we talk about. But sequencing that should be a decision for this entire group. Availability we'll discover next. I think that could help determine when we fit these into meetings. But I also wanted there to be a public conversation about this being agendized by the EJAC over the next couple of months so that we can hopefully ask for a resolution from our Air Resources Board at our September board meeting about how we prioritize these. I don't want to end up like the air conditioning and indoor heating folks over here with a world-saving, life-saving solution that isn't getting enough money and doesn't have enough political will behind it to make the difference that it could. So I don't know if anybody has any questions about this or just wants to start voting for the first thing we want to talk about and set up a sequence so that I can provide the experts with sort of a rough sequence of meetings that we can start seeing who's available and dragging them in.
Yeah, let's go to discussion. Kevin Jefferson?
Yeah, so, with this dual hat thing that I wear, it makes sense that BACMed does an analysis of what experts we could utilize and then ask those guys to come to our air district to share those opportunities, because once again, creating the community benefits fund was one thing, but the second most important thing is how to properly use those funds to make change.
You guys got real problems.
That's what I'm motivated about, is how to properly utilize.
Yeah, I mean, I think this points to a larger structural issue between, the state not having a sort of supreme planning, guidance and the regional air districts not being in alignment. I wish I had your problem, which is too much money and how to spend it right. I can certainly help you reach out to these folks. But I think what would be best for the state and best for most vulnerable regions would be for us to have a set of really clear, high-profile meetings here where we define the opportunity here, and we point out that we've already waited too long.
Great, thank you. Martha Dina?
Well, I'm wondering, I almost want to look at this slide and the next one about what we're going to do for the next meetings. And what I don't have a sense is sort of when how far along is the working groups work, and when is a critical time for that collaboration? That's one set of questions that I have, and maybe we don't have, maybe we do that in the planning of the agendas conversation. But also,
well, I can answer that quickly, which is that that committee was supposed to sunset in December. Somehow that 18 months was considered 2 years, and so we managed to say that they are still working, but the advisors would really be coming in after the fact as individuals, because we weren't able to get this coordinated during that performance period.
okay.
Radhika?
So this is Radhika from CARB. Just to confirm what you're saying is that, and just to reiterate that the 1757 committee, what you're saying is that sunsetting, and they have a particular scope, like they're working with their own scope. So what we are saying is we're just inviting the experts as individuals to this group, and then they can have a discussion here, right?
Yeah, that's correct. Although it'd be great to have agency representatives from natural resources who have, multiple reinforcing planning documents that I think are a little more inclusive and a little more aggressive than CARB zone documents when it comes to conservation, restoration, and vulnerable communities.
Thank you. Other discussion from the committee?
Well, I guess I'm not really good at reading these kind of maps like off the fly, and so I keep wanting to go back to what are our targets for reductions? How many of them can we get through this? How verifiable are those? And then what do we need to do to show that we may not need some of the other questionable proposals that we've objected to, like carbon capture and others, to actually reach those goals, right? Because these, my sense is that these bring multiple benefits, right? Particularly to vulnerable communities, and that should have some weight to it. So I'm trying to see, yeah.
I mean, I can respond to that. You've seen that map before, and we know where the poverty is, and we could prioritize along that by simply saying, you know, agriculture and urban greening projects, because we know which side of town was left behind. You know, if I had written up my sequence, I would have started with agriculture. I would have gone with urban green, and I would have said, you know, wetlands and water security.
Great, thank you. Martha Dina, does that conclude your comments on this? I'll go to Kevin Hamilton, or did you want to add anything?
No, that's it.
Okay, so I'll go to Kevin Hamilton and then Kevin Jefferson.
So I'm looking at the maps and I'm making the assumption this represents the as is map.
Correct.
Okay, just to be clear. Okay. So is there a set of these that they've created that would look at, if we made this investment here, how that would change these maps?
Yeah, that's right. So they weighed in and reviewed and provided input on the natural working lands model that we all discussed a couple years ago. And so for these scenarios aren't presented to necessarily have us have big science ideas, but these are the regions that these cohorts of researchers worked within. And so within each of these 8 categories, there's 2 to 3 people that we can invite in to help us have further conversation. So these are study areas.
Got it. So I think to me it seems like the critical thing for this group is your look, and again, correct me if I'm taking it wrong. I'm kind of playing off of Martha Dina's comment as well. It's like kind of where we're going with this is the idea that we could compare the reductions that we would get by implementing these ideas here, these interventions, if you will. I'll just treat them as interventions. As far as the amount of carbon we could reduce, compared to sort of farcical intervention like carbon sequestration, where we've looked at CARB's representation of how much reduction in carbon we would see with and without carbon sequestration. And it's, depending on whose graph you look at, it's definitely less than 7%, actually probably less than 5%, as far as changing the overall reductions we get from all the programs we already have. So that making these kinds of changes would not only be equivalent to that, but could exceed that. And we know that it works here. There's no doubt about it, because we have history of watching these forests both degrade and be recovered. So that's already been tried and true. And we don't have to stick a lot of pipes in the ground or create all kinds of new technology to somehow transport that, whatever the hell they're bringing up out of there and changing into something brand new that's not going to hurt us or our planet, versus using these kinds of strategies that have been around for, in some cases, thousands of years, to restore these various parts of the natural working land landscape. Is that kind of where we're going with this, with that idea?
Yeah, that's correct. I can say across the board in every working group, they elevated the estimation of carbon sequestration capacity in each of these. And so, but the other thing that they used to find was the opportunity costs of waiting. So that, we know that these work. These need to be done to be in compliance with other plans with regards to biodiversity, wildfire resilience, and plain old civil rights in California. So we get to handle all of those obligations. We get to meet our carbon targets, and we get to like help vulnerable people be safe and make places healthier and wealthier and more beautiful. And we haven't taken any of the, the magical carbon capture solutions off the table. They're still out there. They still haven't been proven, and we can always go back to them. But by prioritizing, the DOE carbon scheme and low carbon fuel standard, the state has fallen behind on putting the political will behind these solutions and supporting the other agencies over in natural resources. And we're running out of time. As they get hotter and they get drier, they get more polluted, these ecological systems will not recover. I mean, they're already past.
The natural carbon sequestration systems versus technological strategies being developed for carbon sequestration.
Correct.
That's kind of the way I'm thinking of it in mind. You got these two groups, right, of sequestering carbon. One is a more natural way, basically reducing, supporting the recovery of natural carbon sinks versus going out and somehow pulling carbon out of wherever, the air, the oil as it comes up out of the ground, natural gas. In some cases, good things like, changing the way we make cement or steel and things like that. And then, comparing sort of the impacts and the cost of the two, what's cheaper, what works more quickly, and is measurable, of course, and reliable, and results in a better planet and a better place for all of us to live.
Yeah, and one when it's stable
potentially
is free.
health improvements for sure in those communities where we're revitalizing the natural landscape in those communities.
Yeah. The other thing they pointed out is that
Makes sense.
Even though there's significant investment, Kevin, up front, that these systems, their costs taper, right? I mean, folks ran this state for over 20,000 years, and it held together, generating more salmon than we could ever eat. And we swapped it out for, cattle that requires constant maintenance, full of pollution, and isn't working. So this is really about redressing the history, and I think that's what brings this well within the EJAC's purview. And so I just want to, I don't want to come in here and say agriculture is where we're going to lead with, and Jill's up there in Hoopa saying, where's tribal country and where's forest health, right? And so I just wanted to have this be an open conversation so that when Resources Agency gets our direction, they know that. I think I was just looking for more authoritative and reputable people than myself to provide direction.
Okay, I thank you. I think it's definitely worth having a meeting with this team, and again, if they can present that kind of difference, and projections and what that would look like against what's being invested in now, and this is being underinvested in, obviously. I think that would be useful for this group to take up, definitely, and worth a meeting at the very least. It's just my thoughts.
I mean, I think it's worth I'm sorry, go ahead, Ray. I just spoke without raising my hand.
Yeah, and I was about to do that, but I did the hand. So I agree. I think it's worth a meeting, and I'm just sitting here and thinking about trying to figure out in terms of what data may be available out there in terms of the carbons that we're reducing through what streams, be it transportation, edifices, the buildings, and just all of what we're doing. I would love to see a visual where we're at, where we intend to be in 10, 20, 30 years, where we're at right now with natural working lands. And what do we have to do to take it to the next level? And how will that neutralize the carbon by when? Because my plan here in the city area of Huron, we've discovered Columbus style, 3,000 acres north of Huron that we could see being home to tens of thousands of trees. So while we plant more trees in the city and we reduce carbon via just energy and transportation alternatives, I'm hoping we could do a negative carbon subregion at some point, but So I'm just kind of just trying to wrap my head around, what that looks like at the state level. I know there's a lot of things going on in different realms, but I'm just trying to visualize it all. So a meeting with them would be great. I would love to just get more information to better understand not just the macro in terms of California, but it helps me kind of figure stuff out locally in terms of our efforts. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll continue the discussion. Dr. Catherine?
Just for the record, Ray, I know you can't see in the room very well, but my hand was up before yours. So you actually jumped in line ahead of me.
No, I didn't take the line. I was provided a space by Martha, and nobody else spoke up, so I took it.
I'm just teasing you, Ray. It's okay that you called on yourself. I'm not offended. So I think as a committee throughout our process, we've definitely talked about and recognized that natural sequestration and paying more attention to that is really important. And certainly California has a lot of altered landscapes. So for me as a geographer and teaching California geography, when I look at these maps, I think about how much of the San Joaquin Valley used to be wetlands and grasslands, and that you basically don't see that at all on these maps anymore. So just to give a second of kind of historical perspective, I definitely can see the relevance in that light. I am also just still looking for a little bit of clarification because it sounds like this committee is done and these experts have weighed in. So we have less than a year left as EJAC, and I'd like to be clear on what is our goal, like what would we be contributing to this conversation, and how much of this can be prepped through the existing natural and working lands work group. How much are we asking? Can CARB staff or CNRA staff go back and model some of this information? I think discussion is absolutely worthy. And also I want to be clear, what is the ultimate goal that we're hoping to hit by the end of this? Because all of the different work groups we have, there are so many different angles to it that we could cover and speakers that we could have. And I personally just feel very conscious of the pressures of time, that we really only have a few meetings left.
Yeah, and I think what I'm proposing is that we use this meeting, this venue, to provide ongoing, instruction to the state to use the scientific input from this committee to not lag on investment in natural and working land. So I think what I'm asking for is 2 or 3 sessions in here, whether they're part-time meetings where I can have these folks come in and talk about the equity considerations and also the missed opportunity if we don't invest now. Because I think we have an Air Resources Board who can provide direction on the implementation of the scoping plan for the remainder of it, and that we can actually start, beta testing in these investments before the 2027 scoping plan. I don't know how many meetings I'm asking for. Every single one of these is significant and is life-saving. But I know that leaving it on the back burner because we're at an agency that regulates oil and gas, and that we got a committee that been fighting on that for a year and a half. We haven't given CARB enough of what we want on natural and working lands. We've been fighting what was queued up for us in other scenarios. So if we only have one meeting, we can just let it be determined by the availability of these experts. But we owe it to California to provide an opportunity for this scientific input to direct the scoping, this current implementation phase. So
to dig a little deeper there, then beyond the meeting, what is the outcome that's expected beyond the fact that we have a conversation?
I want us to request a resolution from the Air Resources Board in September to prioritize investment in these areas. Coming online, and there's legislation on the horizon as well. Otherwise, we can let them continue to pretend that there aren't carbon sequestration benefits of urban greening like we saw, and that we can't hit our carbon targets with that, so we have to turn to engineered carbon removal. We have, this is a new scenario, so it's reasonable that we didn't fully appreciate its value, but now we know a lot more about its value. I think we owe it to ourselves to, I don't know, even if we just go back to the title about the metric tons of carbon sequestrable by this strategy, and have Adam and the modeling team come in here and have the EAC present on its findings. And then, as Kevin always said, a model is supposed to be something that you can play with. It's something you can toggle the inputs on. And right now, we're running out of time to toggle the inputs on investing in nature. And we're going to lose tons of places that matter to all of us. So, I don't help to answer. I want time in these meetings, and I want to make a stink about this because it's important. And I think the board, I think we owe it to them to give them this most recent information. We can also just read their report. And we all know what that'll result in policy-wise.
Okay, go ahead, Tom.
Yeah, this is just, what I know about some local stuff that I'm just gonna throw out there. There's so many tentacles and I'm not an expert on how they all relate, but this is just one example, well, an area example of, in Stanislaus County and the surrounding areas. We, like you mentioned, we have Sigma. It's probably gonna force a lot of land to be fallowed. In my recent research, because they want to make the Northern San Joaquin Valley this biofuels hub, and looking at some of the numbers, and again, I got a lot to learn and I'm not an expert, but numbers that show that actually not tilling land could sequester carbon better than growing crops, turning those crops into biofuels and capturing the carbon that would be released. At the same exact time, in western Stanislaus County, they want to build a new reservoir in Del Puerto Canyon. You're talking about losing places. This is a place where there are Native American artifacts and trails and history that will all be flooded because of the perceived need for more water above ground water storage. Now, I know it's definitely not a popular opinion where we live in the valley to say we should have less agriculture, but I would say it's just a fact that the last 100 years of agriculture is not a sustainable endeavor, and we have water issues. That's why we had to have Sigma, and the power of agricultural industry is probably why it took so long. California was the last state to have groundwater regulation. We have a huge pesticide issue being used in this agriculture. So again, I'm not saying I have a solution. I'm just noting that these all seem to be very related and interconnected, and especially touching in the San Joaquin Valley with water use, sustainable agriculture, natural sequestering carbon naturally, as opposed to giving all this government money to facilities like you mentioned earlier to make biofuels and sustainable aviation fuels. It's going to add trucks to the road, and all kinds of other issues. And then I kind of had one question, and you might not know off the top of your head, but there was something, the restoring delta acres and wetlands by 2045. Do you know what percentage of the delta acres are just in the San Joaquin?
That
Delta?
figure was every acre that's available in the Delta. The deltas are like primary piece of infrastructure for sequestering carbon. So if there was any more acres that couldn't be conserved in public lands, conservation, or shoreline, they would have been included in that figure. That figure is the maximum amount that can be conserved in the Delta, which comes back to your comment about the dam. So damming that water reduces the ability of the Delta to sequester carbon because it interrupts without freshwater flows, the riparian system doesn't work. You don't flush out the tule grass, and so you end up with stagnant water. The tule grass rots there, and off gases methane, short-lived climate pollutant. When in fact, freshwater flows turn that thing into a carbon vacuum, the Delta. You're also diverting that water to unsustainable practices that, as you mentioned, all have sort of industrial indirect emissions. And there was another point that you brought up about that I wanted to highlight on. It'll come back to me. But I think we've talked about, we've been in here with the dairy guys who are like inventing pollution to pretend to catch it. And that nitrate runoff is ruining groundwater and it's ending up in the stream. So that delta is entirely full of harmful algal blooms. And at the very least, California shouldn't be paying to increase those impacts, let alone doing something to address them. So this is a formal part of the scoping plan. It was referred out when everybody observed that CARB didn't know how to do it really well. The chair kicked off this committee. This isn't Matt's story. The Air Resources Board chair was there with Wade Crowfoot kicking this off as to how this informs the scoping plan. I'm just raising the alarm on it now because we're gonna run out of time to invest in these strategies, and neither of the agencies were able to make this conversation happen until now. So, Catherine, I know there's an agenda, and I don't want to push any sort of urgent and important items off of it, but this needs to happen in some way, shape, or form, and I don't know what it looks like.
Yeah, so since you directed that at me, I'll just respond. There is a natural and working lands work group, and so I think it would be helpful if there could be some offline prep that's done to organize and coordinate among these conversations, and then coordination with the co-chairs to figure out where it would fit in the agenda items that we've already started to pace out for the rest of the year.
Great, yeah, and that natural and working group, we actually helped support this Natural Resources Agency Expert Advisory Committee, and the legislation made it real. So these are the recommendations that we were working on. I guess coordinating it with the agenda is something that I haven't done yet. I don't know how much, I didn't know how much time was available in this meeting, and I don't know, we already have something on the books for May. We got May, June, July. And yeah, we
can talk about it offline. I would just say one of the points that I was trying to get at clarifying is you gave this presentation and you said, I wanted to bring this to the group to figure out which areas we wanted to dive into. So I'm still unclear whether we're talking about looking at it holistically in all of the recommendations, because then you also suggested breaking it apart. So it's partly agenda and where does it fit? It's also partly like, which topics are we actually discussing and what are we doing other than looking at the recommendations? Honestly, I'm just still not clear on those parts.
Well, what's your preference? What do you want to talk about first? Because we have to recruit these people whose committee has already expired. So we're relying on volunteers to give the state its own information. So like I said, I would start with, developed lands, agriculture, and forests. You all are on this committee too, and you have the power to agendize. So, and this committee hasn't been integrated into planning.
Martha Dina, you want to add to that?
I'm confused by some of the conversation, but I will say this, that what we have done in the past, and you're part of the committee, and so if it isn't clear, what the Natural and Working Lands Committee might want to do is develop a set of, similar to what we've done around cap and trade and CCUS, is a set of recommendations that we can use as part of our ongoing conversation. And we have it ready, maybe by the June or July meeting, but it needs to be ready and we need to be able to discuss it and understand it before the September meeting, right? So that we are very sort of consistent with the issues that really matter to us, where we've taken on doing those resolutions. So that might be a path forward in terms of, this is not my area of expertise. And so I'm actually really relying on you and Kevin, who work on this issue a lot more than I do, to help me understand it better. So that, because the thing I'm very interested in is those numbers. Like, if this gets us X number of greenhouse gas reductions, why aren't we leaning into this policy, right? And who is implementing these policies around the natural working lands, because it's not necessarily CARB, but where do we need to do to make sure we get these kinds of reductions? Because we may not need those others, right? Because these have multiple benefits. And we have to continue to push for that. And we all know how hard that's been to be heard around some of these issues.
Thank you. So
Just
Radhika? Mhm.
clarification here. Matt, I know Martharina mentioned that the 1757 committee prepares the recommendations, but I think they've already have the recommendations, right? The recommendations are already out. Okay. Oh, okay.
Yeah, and I'll just remind everybody of our conversations in this body is that we all picked at the natural and working lands model for being new and inflexible and not being able to look at alternatives, and that we all stepped back from this analysis because there was a team of 15 expert advisors from conservation agencies that can actually create these numbers. And so, I mean, I'm able to follow this, that we finally have the scientific firepower we need to finish that conversation we had 2 years ago that undervalued natural and working lands.
Right.
And that we have resolutions in both bodies and we have 2 state agencies that should at least give us an opportunity to provide direction on this.
So just in terms of next steps, I know there's a lot of discussion. So in terms of next steps, what are we exactly saying?
Next steps is the working group will get together amongst ourselves as a group, create a, so to speak. And then from that, we will have enough information that I, as chair, can recommend it to the leadership team. But more importantly, I mean, kind of what we're talking about is how could we find creative ways to further this education opportunity? That's why I was saying to you, Kim, talk offline, but at the end of the day, let's create a one sheet or a report card. Bring that back to the leadership team.
Sure, that'll work. I'm just confused by the novelty of this conversation, that we've had multiple conversations here. We should understand the significance of the scenario. I don't know.
It's Matt, it's just how do we fit this body of information into the limited time that we have from here to the future?
Yeah,
So my thought is, how can we get creative in getting it? Because it's really about sharing information and resources. So how can we be creative in sharing this information? Because we are limited by, this couple-hour meeting every blue moon. So how do we come out of that quarterly thought pattern and make this information real? And that's just overarching of how do we do this environmental justice work, to where it's meaningful.
And it's just difficult to recruit people for meetings when we don't know what's on the agenda. So I need help coordinating, and I need, I can't reach out to everybody on that committee because it's Bagley Keene. So staff need to coordinate with them. And before I ask,
Did we lose the sound? I lost sound.
Martha-Dina, go ahead.
No, I lost sound. Or did
Lost Matt
Oh.
there.
Thank you. His mic just went out. Thank you.
I was done.
I'm very confused.
All right. So I think we've gotten some clarity on next steps, and I'm seeing a head shake from Radhika in terms of there's action and something to do. Okay. Martha-Dina, was there anything else there?
No, I think that's why this was on the agenda today.
Wonderful.
This conversation.
And just noting for the record, I believe that we have either 3 or 4 meetings before the joint meeting in September. So that's kind of the urgency and the timeline that we're looking at right now. Okay. I believe, seeing no one in the room and no virtual committee members' hands raised. Matt?
Yeah, I'd like to make a motion to exclude sparsely vegetated lands, seagrass and seaweeds, and shrublands and chaparral from our discussion so that I know who to recruit for future meetings.
So I'm, because this was not
Yeah, if somebody lives it, oh, we can't vote.
this is not agendized as an action item today, but what I hear is a next step for the work group.
I want it to be okay to leave out the desert. I want the EJAC to say that's not our priority. You can do that next time.
I think before next time, the best way, what I'm hearing from everybody is I will put the subgroup meeting with the natural and working lands. We can have more discussion there. And then I think you'll have a better plan of action by working through the subgroup. And the subgroup leader is sitting next to me and the subgroup leader is saying yes.
Yeah, I think it would be wise for CARB staff to talk to the 10 CARB staff members that have been a part of the AB 1757 process and provide some presentation on the value of that research. I just spent 2 years over there. I think I've done my part.
All right. So noting for the record, echoing what Radhika said, I did see some heads shaking yes. So we had Kevin Jefferson shaking his head yes, Jill also, and maybe Dr. Catherine on that next step. But to be clear, there is no motion and we are not taking action on this item. Kevin Hamilton, I saw you just beam in for a moment. Did you have anything to add? I think you're on mute.
Just shaking my head, yes, as well,
Okay.
hoping it doesn't fall off.
Good. All right. We've got some clear next steps from the committee member. So I think that concludes discussion on this item. That takes us to our next agenda item, which is public comment. We'll now open the public comment period. We ask that everyone who is interested in speaking in Zoom, raise your hands. We'll call on you. If you're here in the room, please step to the podium. We are looking to allow 3 minutes for each commenter. So please state your name and affiliation before you provide your question or comment. As we said at the start of the meeting, the committee will not be responding to public comment, but we will be noting it. Seeing that we have no in-person commenters right now, I will look virtually. I'm going to go in order of the hands I saw raised. Evan Edgar, I see your hand raised. Please go ahead.
Hello, Evan Edgar, live from Merced, California, doing carbon farming in the great San Joaquin
All right,
Valley.
Evan, I cannot hear you on this end. I see the microphone moving though, so go ahead.
Okay. Evan Edgar, live from the Merced. Can you hear me?
All right, you are not unmuted on our end. I suspect you're talking because I can see the microphone moving, so I'm going to give this a moment. Can you go ahead and say test, test a couple of times?
Evan Edgar, test, live from Merced, live from Merced.
All right, getting no sound on this end. Evan, I apologize. We'll come to you back in a moment. Let me see if we can go to another public commenter. Cynthia, I'm going to test it out with you. Can you go ahead?
I can hear him.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Yeah, I can hear you. I could hear Edgar as well.
Hello.
Okay, so I'll just note for the record that apparently virtual attendees could hear Evan Edgar. Those in the room cannot hear him. And I believe, Cynthia, we could hear you. Can you state your...
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. So
Great.
not sure how to address this technical issue. Let's just move forward like this. Evan, I will come back to you in a moment. We might be able to troubleshoot that in the meantime. Because we can hear Cynthia in the room, I'd like to go ahead with Cynthia.
Thank you. Cynthia Babbage, Delamo Action Committee founder and director. I have been eavesdropping in on my colleagues today, hard at work. And I want to say first and foremost, thank you all so much. I know we're all busy. We are in traumatic times, and the work that you're doing is vital and important. I also want to say that I particularly enjoyed the last part of the conversations around protecting Mother Earth. Before I became an environmental justice advocate, I was a sole advocate for our Mother Earth and just really wish that everybody would get off the planet and maybe she would survive. So while we tackle with the injustices in our overburdened communities of color, especially, let's not forget the mother. And I see that you're not doing that. So I know you're rushed with time. You're doing a great job, but don't forget to protect the mama, because without her, we have nothing. So thank you all so much for your hard work. If there's anything I can do, most of you know how to reach me. Love you very much. Thank you.
Thank you. Evan, I'm going to check in. Can you say a word? Let me see if I can hear
Evan
you.
Edgar, live from Merced, California. Live
Wonderful.
from Merced. Evan Edgar.
We can hear
Okay.
you. Go ahead.
Okay, great. Yeah, I'm down here in Merced today doing carbon farming with regenerative agriculture. I'm the California Compost Coalition, and last meeting I did talk about what we're doing with natural working lands. CARB did for the first time added that to the scoping plan in 2022. It will come back in 2027, but meanwhile, that CNRA document with targets is well done. A lot of work has been done. And I support Matt, what he's doing to be a voice over there, because I show up there as well. So the targets are in, and with all the amount of greenhouse gas reductions per each management style. We make all the organic compost in California out of urban green waste, and we certified by California Department of Food and Ag and OMRI certified. And we go beyond sustainable ag, we could do regenerative ag. And that means we're actually, having so many co-benefits with regards to water savings. Our test plots, when we do it, is 40 to 50% water savings, erosion control, and plus we support EJAC on phasing out pesticides and fertilizers. So when you use organic compost in the natural working lands and farming and rangelands, you don't need pesticides and fertilizers. And we see great opportunities and growth already on our test plots where we bring back the pollinators, we bring back biodiversity. So throughout California, I'm working on bringing more compost and creating the robust and verifiable with permanence in order to generate some of this voluntary carbon credits for the farmers and ranchers to get off pesticides and fertilizers. And the co-benefits to the communities are great when you don't have to deal with pesticides and fertilizers. You got organic compost and using less water. It's a great story to tell. So I support all the good work you're doing, and the experts have a lot of documents, and I have the documents that I supported over at CNRA that spell it out. Out on the rangelands of California, we're seeing so much benefits, and on the biodiversity where we bring back the little bugs in the soil, and then we bring back the little big bugs, and the raptors are coming back. So all the projects I'm working on, the 5 case studies throughout California and the Great Central Valley, have shown extreme benefits on all the test plots we've been working on for the last 5 years, from the Bulls Ranch in Merced to Van Vleck up in Sacramento. So we have lots to share. I appreciate your good work. You guys are on target to make this a priority, starting with agriculture, because that is the biggest bang for the buck with regards to the most cost benefit of investing cap and trade dollars into healthy soils. This is what is working quite well, and time is running out. Go, Matt. You made a great case today for agriculture. Thank you.
Thank you. Moving to our next commenter, seeing no one in the room, we'll go to Jan.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay. My name is Jan Maas. I'm with Sierra Energy Reimagined. We're a CBO in Nevada County in the Sierra Nevada forest. There's a few comments I wanted to make. One relates to Emma Tomei's presentation on her work with the Zero Emission Space and Water Heating Group. We were one of the organizations that hosted their listening sessions. And I wanted to congratulate and appreciate her and her colleagues' work. This was EJ in action. Those people came out to a very remote area and understood what it is when we say hard to reach. And they presented before a group of, as you can imagine, government distrusting people who were in the end exalted to have been heard and listened to, and then knowing that these recommendations and their feedback was actually taken seriously. And, this kind of intangible goodwill is so important for the work that you guys are doing. So I would like you in this group to take advantage of any opportunities that you can see and engage in these kind of meetings. One thing I would like them to do is to come back and present their modified regulatory recommendations and get feedback, as well as doing the cost analysis, which they are planning to do. In the end, it comes down to cost. That is the only way that we, as an home energy organization, are getting into people's homes and telling them how they can improve their energy efficiency, because it will reduce their costs. We're talking about low-income people. Someone else mentioned this before. Wood stoves are incredibly important in these regions. They're not going to go away unless people would be given affordable alternatives. And they can be made much more energy efficient as well as climate friendly. So that's another thing where CARB needs to talk to the air resources districts. Lastly, one comment related to what Matt said. Everyone may have heard that the fires, combined emissions of the fires of 2020 negated 16 years of carbon reduction emissions from California climate policies. 16 years in 1 year. So everything that can be done to reduce wildfires, calamitous wildfires, needs to be done. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Looking to the room, seeing no one at the podium. Looking virtually, if you'd like to make a public comment, please raise your hand. Noting for the record, we have about 50 virtual attendees at this time. I'll give it a moment. All right, that concludes public comment. We'll go to agenda item number 11, CARB announcements, and then move to agenda item next steps and closing remarks. So announcements.
Thank you, Jane. This is Radhika Majal, branch chief from Environmental Justice and Equity Branch, and have a few updates for the committee here. On the screen, you see a table of all the events that are coming up or the announcements that are coming up. And out of these, I want to bring your attention to the row 3 first of all, this row 3, just bring your attention there. That is the proposed low carbon fuel standard amendment. So CARB posted a third 15-day public notice to notify the public about the availability of the modified text and additional documents and information for the proposed low carbon fuel standard amendments. The public comment period is open, and you can submit your comments only on the modifications identified in the third 15-day notice by April 21st. So I want to highlight that for you here. We will be sending this table via email to the committee so that you have all the links handy. And if you click on the links, it'll take you straight to the public notice. The other few that I want to highlight from this table, in row 1, you can see that there is a virtual meeting that is happening right now on California's climate action plan, but there is a survey component that is still open and is available until April 30th. So wanting to highlight that. And as promised in the previous EJAC meeting, in the March EJAC meeting, we said that we'll come back when we have more information on the April 24th meeting. That would be for the California Satellite Methane Project. So that meeting is happening from 5:30 to 7:30, and the information is on row 4 on the table. So you can take a look at that. In row 5, we have listed a public workshop on April 29th from 4 to 6 p.m. to discuss phase 2 revisions to the 2024 Community Air Protection Incentive Guidelines. So the link is also linked there. In row 7, you can see that we have information about the Senate Bill 597 Cement Sector Strategy Public Comment Period, which is open till April 29th. So these were all the announcements that we will send you via email also so that you have them handy. Apart from these things, I want to just touch on a few things that have come up previously. First of all, Tom, thank you for sending the letter to the staff, the letter from the CVAC on San Joaquin, EJ, and the other EJ groups on the San Joaquin stationary sources. Yes. We're going to take a look at it and then get back to you on it. But thank you for that, for sending it to us.
Just to clarify, that was sent to CARB
Yeah.
way before I resent it when I was asked to.
Yeah. But we saw it when you sent it to us, so thank you, and then we can follow up on it later. Yeah. And Martha Dina, I want to highlight something for you. I know in the last meeting, you and Matt had mentioned about setting up the co-learning spaces between CARB staff and helping CARB staff with, supporting CARB staff as they get staffed up in bringing, and bringing experts on carbon removal solutions. So I think what we can do is in our next co-chairs meeting, let's just have a conversation on what that looks like so that we have clarity on how to proceed forward. So we'll just talk about that in our next co-chairs meeting, and then we'll follow up with you on that. I think.
I'm muted. I want to say this out loud because I may not remember, but I think maybe that's a conversation. When we had the conversation at the last CARB meeting around this, maybe there is a way to bring in the natural and working lands goals into that conversation, right? That's where we start to look at how to load these solutions first in that plan. I mean, that might be a strategy, but I just want to, it came to me and I didn't want to forget.
No, that this is great, but I just wanted to mention that I know the EJAC had talked about supporting CARB staff, so we just want to know how do we do that and logistically plan and strategically plan it out so that we are following that thread. So thank you for that. I think those were all the announcement and the follow-up items that I had. And if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to us. You know how to find us, so send us a note if you have any questions. I will now turn it back to Jane.
Well, thank you. So we'll move to our final agenda item for today. It's next steps and closing remarks. I will turn it over to the co-chairs to kick that off.
Thanks. I'll just go ahead and follow the trend for the day and start us off. This is Dr. Catherine. Thank you everyone for your active participation in today's committee meeting. And just a friendly reminder that in May, we're going to have a discussion with the Building Energy Equity and Power Coalition about building decarbonization. And we'll also have an item on cap and trade and equity issues where we have some invited guest speakers from Stanford.
Yes, I just wanted to say this was a refreshing and wonderful conversation. Me personally, the energy had kind of got a little low. And plus I was having a lot of anxieties, continue to still have anxieties coming in this building, to be perfectly honest. But once in here, this conversation and the group, I feel better. Just that's a personal thing. Natural working groups, I created a report card for the working groups, and it was based upon the recommendations that we had given a scoping plan, where we are today, and maybe some recommendations to how this could go further. So I will have to submit that report, and let's fill it out and go from there.
Thank you. Martha Dina.
I don't have much to add. Well, I do think, I would suggest that the Natural Working Lands Group meet and start developing the resolution or whatever the recommendations are, because it's scary how fast the time goes, even when you think you have a lot of time. So we may, I can't remember what we've got for, so June is the cap and trade? Did you just say?
No, May, cap and trade is on the agenda in May, and then my understanding from CARB staff is that AB 617 is on the June agenda, but I take no ownership over June or July, because again, I will be on
sabbatical. So let's think about, let's find out more what's happening with that presentation on 617, because I know a lot of us are part of that and we'll have a lot to say. But I do think maybe, maybe offline we figure out, without, violating the any rules, figure out what that follow-up for the natural working lands looks like. And so maybe we can do that, Kevin, if you can help sort of move that through when we have our co-chairs meetings. And Matt,
Yes.
you can coordinate outside of here.
Certainly.
Thank you. Martha Dean, does that conclude your concluding remarks?
Yes.
Wonderful. Thank you. All right. I turn it over to CARB staff.
I just wanted to quickly throw another issue out there, like we needed anymore. But as many folks know, Valley Improvement Projects was started around the fact that we had one of only 3 incinerators in the state of California, which then went to 2, which then went to 1, our last one, which closed on December 2nd, which is good news. But because the local municipalities didn't listen to VIP and the folks that came before us, John Mataka, Grayson Neighborhood Council, Green Action, who's actually been saying to shut down the incinerator and come up with more sustainable waste practices for 20 years, and nobody listened to that. So now we're getting blamed because, oh, well, now all the trash is going to go in the landfill instead of the incinerator. Well, we want to tackle that issue too. We're working on our own local zero waste plan. We know Cal Recycle has a statewide zero waste plan that they're just kind of kicking off the process to. And so we are also involved in these spaces, looking at landfill methane and meeting with the coalition of groups. All of this information can be found in another letter that was already sent, but I'll resend it if other people need it. It was a January 24th letter, VIP and a number of other groups signed on to, about tackling landfill methane regulations. It's been far too long since these have been re-looked at. It's a climate justice issue. It's an environmental justice issue. Most polluting landfills are in majority communities of color. It's been 15 years since CARB's methane regulations. There's been a whole bunch of new technologies, obviously, that's come out since then. I think I was on MySpace 15 years ago, just to give you an example of the technology that's more available. So I won't waste, or not waste, but I won't use up too much time here. But I just want to throw out that idea that this could be something that the EJAC tackles and puts an environmental justice lens on as we move forward, and encourage CARB to move forward on those regulations sooner rather than later. That's all. Thanks.
Thank you. Go to CARB staff.
Thank you, everyone. Very glad to see so many in-person faces in the room. It's really heartwarming to meet everybody. And be part of this very constructive discussion. And it really, really thank you. Really appreciative of all the discussion today. Just a one flag for our subgroup for charter discussion. Kevin Hamilton, I'm going to reach out to you because we need to keep moving on the charter discussions if we want to take it to the board in May. So Kevin Hamilton, I'm going to reach out to you. And then the subgroup members for the charter group, I will reach out to you as well. Thank you. And thank you everyone for another wonderful meeting.
All right. Thank you. So I believe our next EJAC meeting is planned for May 15th, again, here in Sacramento. That is all for today. The time is now 4:03. So that is the conclusion of our meeting. Thank you everyone for joining and have a great rest of your day.